Recording in progress.
Good evening. Time is now 6:30 p.m. I'm Vice Chairman Tim Toth. I'd like to call the Select Board Business Meeting to order on this 23rd day of November 2021. All please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to state for the record, not only are we being streamed on our YouTube web platform, but this evening's recording will be available for later viewing on the YouTube channel. If you've not yet done that, hit the like and tap the bell, and you'll be notified whenever anything pops up on our feeds. This evening, we have the following board members, staff, and expected guests. Mr. Bennett, Ms. Griffiths, myself, Town Administrator Adam Lamontagne, Paula Young, Mr. Castle from TCTV, Chief Bennett, Templeton Police Department, Tom Berry, Templeton Power and Light, and one of the later presentations tonight, Mr. Don Jacobs, and we have some folks out in TV land as well, Lauren Hook for a presentation later as well. As always, the agenda has been set no later than 48 hours by law. It is publicly available at our official source for town information, templetonma.gov. Although I have the discretion as the chair to add or remove from the agenda, it has been set to allow for time, personnel resources, and public awareness. I reserve the right to move agenda items around to fit the business and our guests. Thank you. And I do not intend to rearrange the agenda this evening. First order of business, approval of the minutes from our meeting of 11/10/2021.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the meeting minutes of 11/20/21 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the approval of the meeting minutes? Hearing none, we'll call for the roll call vote. Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. So moved. Citizen input. I'd like to start briefly just to acknowledge the events that transpired over the weekend in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Our thoughts and prayers to all the individuals involved and the tragic loss of life. I'd also like to acknowledge Templeton Power and Light for the speed and effectiveness of resolving our power outage. I understand that affected about 3/4 of the community today, and my clock at home said it was 47 minutes. That's phenomenal. So we thank you for that. Anything else? Okay. Moving on, new business, introduction of new employees. Chief Bennett, please.
I'd like to present to the board and to the community 3 new part-time employees we have at the police station. In no specific order going down the line, but we have Timothy Stewart, we have Karen Swan, we have Lauren Walter. A little background on them. Tim and Taryn are both have been in the public safety sector for a few years. They're both dispatchers. They were hired as both dispatch and patrol part-time. And they're looking to further their goals of becoming full-time police officers. Lauren Walter has a history of over 10 years with the Gardner Police Department. He's coming over to us part-time. And we're looking forward to his leadership at our department with the part-timers. He brings a lot of knowledge and experience, so we're looking forward to that. Other than that, if you have any questions for them.
Oh, thank you, Chief. So I guess the question I would like to raise is what I used to do when I was managing an ambulance service years ago. I used to always ask my candidates, what makes you want to play in our sandbox? And that's usually a great icebreaker. But seriously, welcome to the team. Thank you for coming in. Chief, thank you for presenting the new employees.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Welcome to the team. And Taryn, it just dawned on me, I'm like, where have I've seen that face before. So we both work out at Muscle Works. Welcome.
Very good. Mr. Castle, you have somebody present as well, I understand.
Yes, we do. I'd like to introduce everyone to our new media assistant, Logan Casey. Stand up, Logan. Logan is a student at Mount Wachusett Community College studying media arts, so he's very interested in what we're doing, and hopefully he'll stay interested in it. We're out today shooting video, and we have a big sponsorship in December that he's going to help us with. We're going to go all over the region shooting video and interviewing people. So I think it'll be a great addition to our team, and we're looking forward to working with him.
Outstanding. Logan, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the team. These guys do some phenomenal work for us. Okay, I understand we have no appointments this evening. Okay, perfect. And next up, we have an action item for you to present regarding ARPA funds.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the select board, I've recently
Night.
attended the
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Meeting of the advisory committee, and they recommended favorably towards my ARPA funding request. I'll share it on the screen, folks, to see if that's favorable.
Screen share.
Screen sharing.
Check the mic.
And it-
Yeah, cable back.
You're up on that.
So what this is we have a process where we have request forms that need to be filled out. Obviously, with the vote of the select board to approve the funds, we're anticipating receiving 2.4 million. We already received 1.2 million thus far. In our process that we have, there's our request forms, and right now we're trying to figure out our spending plan. So I received this from our accountant and auditors that they can determine our revenue replacement for funds. So let's say it's determined that we have revenue loss of $400,000 out of the 2.4 million. That $400,000 could be used for general government services, and the other 2 million has to be used for the eligible criteria. So a lot of municipalities are already doing this. They're having their folks do this calculation. Yeah, as the accountant indicated, it's a very tricky and very in-depth process. They look over 4-year periods and how much that the town ultimately lost in revenue. So this will help us determine how much we lost, and if it's, let's say, $400,000, that $400,000 can be applied towards general government services. And this is the first step in us coming up with the spending plan. When we have that joint meeting to go over all the requests for the ARPA funds, and we could ultimately determine which criteria they meet, and then they would have to be approved by the select board. The select board have the final say on these. So buck stops with you folks, and this is the first request, and I think it's money well spent to first determine whether we can, if we have any, and this would be eligible under ARPA.
Apologies, Adam. Did you say the advisory committee has recommended it as well?
They did,
Okay.
yes. And I Mr. Toth and I were working on ARPA for a while. I know he attended multiple webinars, and I'm not sure if there's anything else he wanted to add, but he's well aware that this is a first step.
It's still remaining a moving target, but yes, looking at the way this is presented, this is one of the steps just to make sure our expenses and our debts and everything align. So this is peeling back the layers of the onion to make sure we're following this and meeting the criteria currently outlined, and I'm sure it's going to change again in the next week or so, as it seems to have done for the last 3 or 4 months.
So true.
Now, what is the letter from Mr. Roselli? Does that go to this?
That's an attachment to the request. That was the request
And
I
does
received.
that get passed on to advisory as well, before they
They
make their
received it.
determination?
Correct. I just wanted to supply some backup material to the request.
That is the justification on the estimated cost of the project, correct?
Well, just the languages, you know, like just, it's a red flag type of language. Coin toss to me is like, what? But it's close and worth the effort. Yeah, I suppose if I was receiving compensation at that rate, I'd go over it.
Sometimes you have to spend a couple to get a few, and
Right.
the legislature left and there's still, I don't know, 92% sitting there. They're waiting to figure out what they're gonna do, and
Right.
so.
And this is the basis of the estimated project cost. This is what I said, peeling back the layers of the onions. Make sure that exclusions that may skew growth rate yield a negative result. So we want to make sure that's not happening before we commit to spending all the funds.
Oh,
You know, we have the potential to spend up to 400,000, but if we do this calculation and find out we can't, then it shuts it down right then and there.
Right, then it's like you said, it's money spent to find out before you
make a
go
mistake.
spend a couple $100,000 that you end up not having
Yeah.
and pay back. Well, you know, that is.
And they will pull back
Oh, yes.
real fast.
So,
Any further discussions? Adam, thank you for the input.
Thank you.
I will call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the use of ARPA funds as presented.
Second,
Motions are made and seconded. Any further discussions on the approval for the use of the ARPA funds to begin our process? Hearing none, I will call for the roll call vote. Mr. Bennett,
yes.
Ms. Griffiths?
Yes,
I vote yes as well. So let the record show unanimous by the quorum present. Next up, a light donation, the Aaron McKay Memorial at the Gilman Wakefield. Very good. Fill us in a bit, sir.
Welcome. First, I'd just like to thank you for the kind words on the light department. I'll definitely pass those along to the operations crews this afternoon or tomorrow. So I'm here today about installing a light to light the flag at the Aaron McKay Memorial at Gilman Wakefield. Her sister approached me at the light department some weeks ago to see if the light department could install the light to do that, but since everything's underground, there's no poles or anything to do that. So it really have to be mounted to the building or the concession stand there. So I would like to donate the light and labor process to get that installed. I'm looking to mount it on the front of the concession stand via LED type spotlight above the right door. Yeah. I'm not the best artist, obviously, but give a general idea of the location of it. So that would have to be installed by an electrician. I would get a licensed electrician. I've already actually met with somebody there this morning.
I knew him for a long time, growing up with the kids.
To do that. So it would have a photo control on it, so it would go on and off, you know, with the darkness. And I'd also have them put a switch on the inside of it so it can be shut off if there's no flag there. I guess Aaron's family's been putting up and taking down the flag every day, you know, now, since it isn't a white there. So there'd be no cost to the town to do this, and as far as electrical costs, I figured it out, it would be about $20 a year to operate it. That's if it's on, you know, all every night.
So minimal expense to meet the 10 USC US flag code to illuminate the flag at night.
Yeah, I think so.
How long do you think this will last before we need replacing? Yeah, I mean, I'm, you know.
Well, they're supposed, those, realistically,
Yeah.
well, they're supposed to be 20-year lights, but I can tell you from, you know, all the LED lights in town, you know, there are failures. But it is it's not like a high pressure sodium or you know, other type of light like that where you gotta change the bulb. I mean, there's no, it should last for many years.
It's on swivel.
Yes, yeah, he's gonna put a junction box that's rotated and aimed right where it needs to be.
Any other questions?
Does that 28 come out of our budget now?
The 28
Year, basically,
that we would have to budget for it,
you know, what? Does that come out of the general fund or?
building and grounds. Off the top of my head, I believe it's building and grounds.
I believe.
I'll go through the meter on the concession stand.
Seems reasonable to me.
Seems very, very reasonable. No further questions?
I just the boxes, the Rolodex is moving. And it's been done in the past for just for technicality, clarity, transparency is for the board to waive the inspection fees for this work. It's, I mean, electrician's gonna come in and work, it should get inspected. It's on a town building to make sure it's right and waive that. Like I said, it's a technicality vote. It's been done before when we've done town stuff for the town inspector to
So add to the
do that.
motion.
Can be amended.
I mean, it's just,
Well, the motion wasn't even made, so you know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that.
It's very good. Like to enter that as part of the motion?
What's that?
Would you like to enter that as part of the motion?
yes, please. Make the motion. All right, I move to accept the donation of the light at the Gilman Waite Field as presented and with this additional stipulation that the board would waive the inspection fees, seeing how it's a town project on town property.
Second,
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will call for the vote. Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths.
yes.
I vote yes as well.
That
Mr.
one,
Berry, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, very good.
I appreciate the generous donation.
Thanks, Tom.
Next up on our agenda, item 5E, certificate of thanks for the veterans cards. This was a very moving event. We presented those on the 10th of November at this meeting. The bunch that were collected were then shown later and shared with the veterans at the Legion on the 11th, right after the ceremony. And they've also been shared with the Disabled American Veterans and the Bedford VA. And it's just bringing smiles and thanks everywhere it's going. So It was quite the heartfelt event. The 5th grade class really deserves the pat on the back.
And Mrs. Cormier, Michelle Cormier. In all, fun, the instigator.
There will be a presentation made. We have a nice certificate, suitable and framed,
Thanks,
signed by
Jeff.
the members of the board. And that was on the suggestion of Select Member Bennett, which was awesome.
And I'd just say that that was, it became aware on Facebook, and there are a ton of people who thought it was, they shared our thoughts as well. It was an awesome idea, great for the kids. It was shared how many places those cards have gone, like about halfway around the state, various places. Sheila's probably still showing them around and stuff. Our veteran service officers are very good with that stuff. So I'm hoping when we present it and the kids get it, they I hope they get as big a kick out of that as I did, speaking personally, as I did for the cards and stuff that they did. It was really like a kid project. You look at the cards and it's 5th grader perspective, and it's kind of neat. So thank you.
I have to echo that sentiment. I don't think they understand the how big this project has actually become. And it was definitely the right thing to do, and it's been very, very well received. So recognizing the whole group for their efforts is certainly well worth the while. Any further discussions? If none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion for the board to approve and to issue the certificate of thank you to the Narragansett 5th grade class of 21, 22. I'm sure when they graduate, 29, 30 something. but If they're thinking that far ahead. They're smart rascals though for them cards, so they may be.
Yeah.
I
Well,
second.
We can go 21, 22 for graduating on the 6th grade.
I'll second that motion. Motion made and seconded. Any discussions? Second call, any discussions? Hearing none, we'll go for the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Next up, a discussion, Habitat for Humanity, Carolyn Reed. Hello.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you for the invitation to come.
Thank you for joining us. And
Yeah, it is exciting.
we have copies of your slides in our packets, and we're sharing them to the YouTube stream, as you can see. So it's out there in TV land as well.
Excellent. So the reason I wanted to kind of speak to you, and the reason I came and spoke to Adam as well, is Habitat for Humanity North Central Massachusetts has been serving North Central Mass for 33 years. But just this past year, we added 5 towns within town. So we had been serving 25 towns in western Middlesex, and northern Worcester County. And we added Athol, Hubbardston, Templeton, Wichita. So I just wanted to make you aware of the programs we offer to your citizens, so you can let them know about it. And we'd love to at some point partner with you to build a house in town. So our vision is a world where everyone has a decent place to live. And our mission is to bring people together to build homes, communities, and hope. The Habitat is set up with independent affiliates. There's 15 in Massachusetts, and we're one of them. And we are affiliated with Habitat International, and we follow all their rules and their mission and vision. But in our local area, we can choose the projects that we do in our strategy. So we've chosen our strategy to be building 2 new homes per year, so adding to the affordable housing stock, but also repairing up to 24 homes as well. So that's what I really want you to know, and everyone in town to know about tonight. is if there are people in town who are living in any existing affordable home, so not a Habitat home, but any existing affordable home, which generally means about 1,800 square feet or less, and they're having trouble maintaining their home, we will come and do projects to help them maintain their home. So we've done projects including accessibility ramps, accessibility remodels, a lot of re-roofing, because for a lot of families coming up with the $10,000 is very high. We've done rot repair, replacing soffits, allowing people to keep their homeowners insurance, so attacking the list that they might get for them to keep their homeowners insurance. The criteria for both programs are similar, so families need to earn 60% or less of area median income and have a need and no other resources to do that, and a willingness department. So for home building, we require 200 to 350 hours for the family to help build their house. And for critical home repair, if the homeowner is able, they put in 8 hours per 1,000 of materials. And both the programs, it is a loan, a 0% loan. So for the house, the mortgage is set for 30% or less of the gross income of the family to make sure that they would be able to make that payment. And we work with our families. We hold the mortgage. So we work with our families if they ever get in trouble or have a health crisis, we'll work with them to make sure that they can stay in the home. And then for critical home repair, we do a pay it forward agreement. So we don't do a mortgage, but we do a pay it forward agreement, allowing families to help the next family in whatever amount they can afford. So if it's $10 or $50, depending on what it is per month. And then again, we work with the family if they get months where they just can't do it. So those are the two programs I wanted to tell you about. Right now, we're building in Hubbardston. We just broke ground on a property on Narragansett Road. We closed on one on Old King Road in Athol a couple months ago, 3 months ago. A little Cloverdale family, so they've moved in. They have 3 children. They were living in Fitchburg. They've been homeless a couple of times, and now they're living in a home. That's their home. The homes that we build are generally 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,200 square feet, and they're built to be accessible. So if the family selected needs it, they're always visitable, but we'll make them accessible if the family needs that. We do family selection when we're permitted, and then that way the family has time to help build the house and also take first-time home buyer courses and budgeting courses. The way we get land is the town sometimes donates it. In Hubbardston, it was a property that was taken for tax non-payment. They separated into 4 lots. 3 went market rate, and they reserved 1 for affordable housing. Yeah, so it was really good. And then they do have CPA funds, so they donated some CPA funds. And when we build in a smaller town, we start a local project committee, and someone from the town will serve as a family advocate for the family. Someone will serve on the family selection committee. And then we have folks help us find volunteers, because we have a construction manager, but volunteers help build the house. So the LPC in Hubbardston is going strong. Other land we've gotten from builders. The land in Athol was a builder who decided that he wasn't going to ever build on that land, so he donated it. Occasionally we've helped major contractors if they're doing a 40B, then we'll do some of their 40B homes. And then in Ashburnham, we built 2 homes, and the builder was required to build a number of affordable units. And he bought land for us to build them instead, because we didn't know how to do the affordable piece. Because when we partner with the town, we'll do the LIP LAU agreement. We'll handle all the paperwork, the Department of Housing and Community Development. So we can partner on that. And the builder didn't want to deal with that, so he gave it to us, which was lovely. And in those 2 houses, so the family selection is wide open. Both of the homeowners ended up being named Jessica. Single moms named Jessica. So it was really neat. We do end up partnering with the vocational schools. So for Ashburnham, Athol, and Hubbardston, we've partnered with Lamontagne. So they go during the week and build, and the students get to have a learning environment, and our volunteers come on any days they're off and every Saturday. And that's worked really, really well. It's been a great partnership. So I've got a few pictures in here of our past projects that we've done. So we have more of a standardized house now, and we've built the same house 4 times now.
Okay.
But it all depends on the land.
Yep.
So you can see here, we had one up on a hill. Acton required a garage. We don't usually build garages, but we put one on that house. We've done a couple of duplexes. The one on Gabriel Lane in Acton was a rehab. And we've done 3 rehabs now in the town of Acton. One was a historic property, which was really, really cool. It was built around 1900 as factory worker housing. And then we got to rehab it and return it to affordable housing. It was a beautiful old building. The one in Air was a duplex side by side. So we have 3 duplexes in here. One was offset capes, side by side colonials, and then side by side capes. I mean, ranches. I put the house plan in here and then just a project budget and a schedule for, as an example. So it usually takes us about a year to build the house. And the cost of materials is usually about 170,000. We do apply for lots of grants when we build the house. We apply to Federal Home Loan Bank for all homes and then some other grant makers. And then we do local fundraisers as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely a giving back to the community.
Yeah, and it's a great partnership with the community between Habitat, and that's what it was meant to be.
Now we have Carrie Novak on CPC and Ag Commission that did work with Habitat.
Oh, right.
She'll be knowledgeable if you have to go to CPC.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's good when they know. And where a percentage of their funds is for affordable housing, and there's partnership on that side too.
Yes.
And I see that you guys have passed inclusionary zoning, which is wonderful.
Thank you.
Great thing for you.
I've been familiar with the program for years, active duty, traveling around the country and been to quite a few states and seen some amazing work that your organization has done. It's really exciting, 4 towns in the local area that have also gotten involved. That's awesome.
Yeah.
A little bit of giving back to the
It's very
community.
needed now.
It
It is.
really is, with
It is.
housing prices going so crazy.
Mm.
Yeah, we see the need even more. We don't pre-qualify anyone. We have to follow all the mortgage laws, but we take down names of people who are interested. And right now we have about 300 people interested. in
Wow.
It is, it is. And some people are interested in the different areas of our region.
Rewarding work.
It is, yeah.
One of your national spotlights and spokespersons, Mr. Jimmy Carter, former president, still out there swings the
I
hammer.
know, isn't that amazing?
It is. God bless him.
Yeah, he's
A lot
an
of good work.
amazing man. I have the privilege of going to the Habitat conferences in Atlanta, and he's been to 2 of them.
So would this be something we put on our webpage?
Board want to make a motion to put it on the webpage? We could do that.
What do you think, guys?
I mean, I don't even think you need to make a motion. We could just do that.
If this is more information. I don't think it needs the formality of a motion.
When we talk about our sort of movement to a housing trust, which that way we could put this in there, and along with the 40B affordable housing, stock requirements, it should definitely be in that folder, in that group.
I know what you're trying to say.
To,
Right now, we're what, at 7% of the state mandate of 10% for low income?
But, yeah.
After the
40B,
Baldwin bill package, after the Baldwin bill thing
when
was
that-
in,
yeah,
but
when
this,
that gets
is this
actually on the
something that will
books.
help? Is that what you're driving?
I-
at now?
Yes, and I think it should to be made aware. So when we talk about those things and if we get that ball rolling on that stuff, we include this in it.
As an option,
So
developers.
because once you get a trust and even the CBDG grant money, when you make loans for homes like we did one a little bit ago, that's that pay it forward thing. It sounds like it's a hard thing to do to say, no, the money must come back to the town so you can use it for another project to pay it forward and get the 40B housing and meet the state requirements and even go beyond it. And that's just that's one of those right things to do for the citizens of the town and people who may want to come here. Because you never know, one day they're they're in affordable housing and the next thing you know, I don't know, they're the next Apple, whatever, you
Yeah,
never know.
exactly. Right.
So, but it's the right thing to do, and there's that requirement, and it just make the town more sellable, more attractive to have that percentage in the town, even beyond it. That shows good for the town, and it's
It does.
it's all
It's the
around
right
good.
thing to do.
So
right?
it's a thing to include in that conversation.
Okay, so in the meantime, we can put it on our page and include it in, moving forward with our 40B and low income.
This is more informational, but sure, we can certainly add this little radio button with the things going on.
And I know what.
This is very exciting. It's just opening
Thank you
some
for
other
choosing
doors.
Templeton.
Yeah.
And it also, to Jeff, Mr. Bennett's point, let's get the word out.
Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to your point, it's a sister to 40B. So if you go with a local action, and you don't need all the paperwork of a 40B and the zoning bylaw.
And like you said, people may have an issue with their home that needs repairing before it collapses and ends up, it ends up in the town's lap. So you can assist them and get them back up, and you keep them in their home, and it keeps them on the tax rolls, and it's an avenue for, if you take a piece of property for tax title and say it's a burnt down house or something, maybe that's a way to get that home back there and someone in it and back on the road. It's just a good thing all the way around to keep in mind and package it whenever we approach that subject.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your
Thank you for allowing
time.
me to come.
Thank you very much for your
Have
time.
happy Thanksgiving. Oh, thank you, you too.
It is. Up next, action regarding the River's Edge project contract. Mr. Lamontagne, would you like to take this one and present?
On the River's Edge project contract, we went out to bid little, I believe it was, hold on one second. Went out to
Safe
bid.
travels down.
Thank you.
Bids were due back Monday, September 27th. We had roughly 32,500 in an article set aside for this. The bids came in. It came in over. Fortunately for us, the lowest apparent bidder was able to hold that price of the 42,870. And we had an additional appropriation at the fall town meeting for the 12,500, which gave us enough to have the money appropriated to complete this project. By the invitation for bid package that was sent out, in the language, it designates the select board, make one contract award for the site work at River's Edge Conservation Area for the lowest price, and this is within your authority to, you could sign it to me to get this contract signed, and hopefully come by this contract, we could get the work started in April and get it completed and close out this project that we had on the books since 2016.
And on the book since special town meeting November 2015,
15.
when the money was appropriated for this. So I guess in 2022, it's about time we could finish it, grab the last nail in the spike in the ground or whatever.
And then this will be another project that we completed. And I think it's another thing that will beautify that area.
It's all by this landscaping.
Yes.
And it goes to town meeting's intent for a conservation area that when they voted on that
Yeah,
way back then, so.
bring it on.
Any further thoughts, discussions?
Is this, so this language, the town shall pay and the contract shall accept, or is it should be contract? Adam, page, it's the second page of the contract, general contract. If you look under Article 4, compensation to be paid by the town, it's a minor thing. For the town shall pay and the contract shall accept, or it should be contract?
That's the catch contract.
And then site work for Rivers Edge Conservation Area, it's just a semantics. An experienced licensed contractor, or I thought insured licensed contractor, but I see that you got to that at the end, that they have to hold their own insurance.
Yeah, well, that was a bid package that already went out, Terry. Yep.
Okay,
But yeah, we could make that amendment to Article 4.
yes. The town shall.
Sometimes when you look at these contract documents after a while,
Oh, they blend all in together.
they're.
I have to get a mouth guard because if I fall asleep, my teeth grind.
So it was good though that the contractors willing to hold the price so we could go through the fall town meeting and at least now we get this completed.
Yes,
That was certainly an act of good faith on their part.
Oh, yeah.
No
without a doubt.
doubt.
Bob's ready to go, huh? Bob Sosik, he's been,
We saw him in the office. He was so happy about this.
yeah, yeah. And it's a good heads up, he's got a little bit of time to think for 2022. April is when the work is set to commence. Thanks, once we pass.
And what I like about this contract too is we pay it all at the end on a lump sum.
I noticed that,
When the
that
work's
was
completed.
something else, huh? You don't find that too often.
Like, if I could write contracts, I'd try to get them all like that, where we make sure the work's done to the standards we want them and the way we specify within the bid package and, until it's all done by specification, we don't pay until the work's complete.
And conservation signed off on it.
You're gonna mess up the apple cart, having all these plans in place for these projects. We're planning stuff now and following them. Templeton's hitting big time,
There's a lot of rules.
but this would be that, clean up that area, make it look presentable and nicer, and then place for area residents to go for a variety of things. It's about time.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion.
I move to award the contract for the Rivers Edge Conservation Project to Busy Nursery in the amount of $42,870, and to have the town administrator sign the contract and all related documents.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Any discussions? Second call, any discussions? Hearing none, we'll call for the roll call vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths,
yes.
and I vote yes as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tim. There was one more thing on public contracts. It says debarkment instead of department. You can have my page. I don't know if it's a dozen.
Terry, that's what it's called.
Debarment? No way. What the heck
Yes.
is a
I
debarment?
thought it was something in the contract document.
What
That's
is-
the third package. That's what that's called, yes.
Learn something new every day.
Gotta love public procurement.
Yes.
I have to look up the name.
Okay, next on our agenda, action regarding the town property use policy. Mr. Chair. Mr. Town Administrator, go ahead.
This went in front of you, I want to say about 3 months ago, if I'm remembering off the top of my head. And the board wanted us to go back and make some adjustments. They brought up some things. So Holly went through and checked off all the concerns that the board had, and hopefully the board will find those corrections suitable for passage this evening, or unless you wanted to bring it up one more meeting, it's up to you. But Holly, did you want to go over some of the things that you covered? I know you reached out to town council. I believe you sent that email off to to some portions of this policy. But this is something we want to get done the town, because this is another thing that we can certainly use to ensure compliance within the town and our property. Holly, if you wanted to, Mr. Chair, if I can have Holly speak.
Yes, please.
Yeah, there were several things that a few of you had mentioned, and I went through that. I had forwarded the email from town council. Alcohol is not prohibited on town property, but that would be up to the board whether they wanted to, allow that. There is a porta potty section in there that we had talked about, and that would be under the Board of Health for them to give permits for that. I made sure I include the handicap parking access in there. And there was something about resident or non-residents and organizations
That
that,
was Mike, that was the chairman, Mr. Curry. And this was back in August 25th.
Yeah.
I watched the meeting, some of it earlier today, and that was his question was, or his thing that point he was making. How do you differentiate, an organization for a resident? Like, just picking one, the other sportsman's club wants that they really do it, but if they want to do something on the common, or the Lions Club or something, and a person, say they live in town, or the president or the representative comes here, and his thing was, how do you differentiate? To me, it would be, are you representing an organization or yourself? Because if you're here for like wedding, it's for yourself. If you wanted to use, say you're gonna try to put a business together, and in preparation for getting stuff to advertise, you want to take some photographs of, I don't know, Gilman Way Park or something, as a backdrop and stuff. That'd be like an individual, because you're not a business yet, you're putting something together. But if you come here and say, hey, the Lions Club, I represent them and we want to do this, or guy in the Chamber of Commerce wants to do that, or whatever, then you're an organization. And but there was kind of a back and forth about, an individual and an organization and a resident and a non-resident. I think one of his things was, if you come here for like the Lions Club and you live in Athol, are you, a resident or a non-resident? And if it's the Templeton Lions Club, then that's a resident business. We had it the same way on the 25th that was shown. And what we have tonight, and that's my thing that just bugs me, we're gonna charge a resident $50 and a nonprofit 25. And it doesn't say if that's nonprofit, local, or outside. It just says, to me personally, just I know you want to get this, get this done and get this in place, but I would like, I just, since the chair had a few concerns, I don't know how the rest of the board would, I would be in
Table it?
favor of pushing this off to the next meeting, so he can be here and address his concerns and ask his questions in person. I just,
So outside of the concerns the chair had, and I believe yours on the price,
yeah, the fees to use it, it's almost, I don't know. They're a little high for my taste. I mean, a resident comes and wants to use the thing for pictures or a wedding or something. I mean, if you're a resident, you're already paying taxes to support that. I mean, it's just, that's my contention on here is the some of the fees. And I'd like the chair to, an individual who raised concerns and had some questions and things to be here. I don't want to speak for him and say, we'll do it this way. I would just prefer.
so we'll just keep this on for the next board meeting. And, discuss it further then.
Like I said, he had a few back and forth questions, concerns going around, and I don't want to assume to, make his fix for him. I think it would be better if we.
But if the board can just think about the fee schedule, because I mean, we could amend it that evening.
Okay.
So that's something that we could do relatively.
I had a little bit of verbiage too. I thought that, if I can, are you done? Mr. Brown?
Oh, yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, for the time. That's it.
So where it says event organizer has to be at the event all the time, I mean, what if there
Where
was,
was that?
so it says event organizer, the Templeton resident, maybe I'm not understanding it, the Templeton resident or non-resident applying for the permit and determined to be in charge of the event and whom will be in attendance and take responsibility for the event during the entire time it is run.
So it would be
What
for
if
the
it's like the
duration.
craft fair and it's 3 days long? I mean, does that person have to be there from morning to night, all 3 days, or could they, or someone they appoint as a co-chair?
I think that's taking responsibility. Just like, say, Adam Wood is the town administrator, he might not be on site at the town, town hall every second, but he's responsible for it. I think that's kind of the same thing.
It says whom will be in attendance. So the attendance is just
Well,
loosely,
I
whom will be in attendance and take responsibility for the event during the entire time it is run.
Mhm.
It's just that trips me up a little bit. So it's
Doesn't say-
taking it too literally. Am I taking it too literally?
I believe so.
It says will be in attendance and take responsibility for the event the entire time, during the entire time it was run. I took it to mean they had to be there the whole time.
Right.
And I thought if it's a 2 or 3 day event, that might be a stretch for somebody. If they had a co-chair, or if they could appoint somebody as,
Or we could change it or the designate,
yeah.
which would be more suitable to alleviate your concerns. So Holly, if you could just make that.
Okay.
No.
And on that note, and it's something that Jeff had mentioned as well, with the resident, non-resident business organization, I did add those definitions in,
Yes.
so we could kind of clarify who they are when they, apply.
Yeah, right in the front, yeah. Okay. so-
Yeah, and if you could all take a look at the fee schedule and, send me your suggestions. I can I just was kind of taking a stab at the fees, what I thought would be good, so
Did you do any, like,
I haven't now, any
around?
research, no. Didn't have time for that, but I can do that between now and the next meeting.
So do we. We can do.
Any other suggested changes for now?
That's good. So I think it is, and I'm certainly not against deferring this. So Mr. Perry can address the topics he had identified when we were talking about this, way back when.
Right,
So I had a couple of questions to, and then once, so say we did the Jack Frost Festival next year. So a good time to start would be September or October. to apply for that. 60 days, it says. Rather than at the last minute. And then I think the cert team thing was self-explanatory in the end. You have to go to the chief first. And then if cert is needed. But you have to go to him first, right?
Yeah, I did it so I made it a little bit more in depth. And so they have to go to each person, whether it's the police chief for the parking plan, emergency management for the CERT team.
Yeah, so the chief has to give the direction to go to cert, right? He would say, the chief.
For the emergency management plan.
No, it says event organizers must contact each department separately for any additional permits needed, parking plan approval, cert team needed for traffic control, etc. So they would have gotten that from the chief. It's,
Right, and they would have that on the application.
all right, I just want to make sure.
Before is, oh, sorry, are you all set there?
I was just gonna make a motion.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, I motion to table this town property use policy until such a time as Mr. Curry is available. Or do we have to have a specific date?
Or to the next board, meeting.
That would defer to the next board meeting.
So table it till
Next board. meeting.
next board meeting, which is December
Eighth.
8th.
Motion on the floor. I will second. said
Yes,
motion.
second.
We'll give you the second, Jeff. Any other discussions before we call for the vote? On the motion to defer to our next meeting on December 8th, how do you vote?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes,
And I vote yes as well. Next up, item I, action regarding the town property use permit for the tree lighting.
Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in here for a second.
Justice.
Sure. So, Justice and I spent some time on this working, Terry. This event, there was some confusion that occurred, but I believe have it all straightened out. But Justice, do you want to take it from here and kind of explain everything that led up to where we are today? Because we do want to have a successful tree lighting ceremony in the town. So Justice Graves from our office explain further. Thank you, Justice.
So at your previous board meeting, or a few meetings before that, actually 2 board meetings, you had discussed, Ms. Burgess had come up that she was going to work with the necessary people in order to have the tree lighting ceremony that we usually have in the various villages in town that happens usually on the first Sunday of every December. So what we came up with was a schedule, as you see on the form that I filled out, that we would be in the town common. People could be there starting at 4 just to get comfortable and set up. Things would start promptly at 4:30 in the town common and then proceed until 5. Then there would be a 15-minute buffer period to 5:15. And then at 5:15, the next period would start at Houghton Park, which in our case, we would also use to showcase that we have done the skating rink that is getting set up down there, which is very exciting, that the rec commission and the select board had agreed upon to do. And then after 5:45 would be a buffer period until 6, and then from 6 until 6:30, the residents would go over to Baldwinville Center. The light would be lit there, the tree would be lit there, and then they would go over and finish at the senior center for a popcorn and a movie. There were other events mixed in there. I wouldn't necessarily say events, but other spectacles. Well, I mean, they are spectacles, nice events that there was some confusion about what the order of events would be in terms of those, how that would interact with the 30 minutes and then the 15-minute buffers that we have for each zone that we were going to. At 4:15, and this is why I had put the 4 to 4:30 buffer for people to show up. At about 4:15, I know that the Narragansett Regional School District's marching band will be lining up, and we'll go lining up on Otter River Road, and then we'll go from that zone marching through Boynton and past the Historical Society to go to the town common. And then at that point, the rest of the proceedings would happen, and then people would go from zone to zone as specified with those 15-minute buffers in between. I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to speak on this, Ms. Griffiths.
Oh, covered, yeah. Still trying to get a hold of Mr. Mayo to find out who Lalo was. So Alan, if you're watching.
Oh, for the box.
Yeah.
So if we get ourselves back into some sense of normality, this happened at a pretty quick pace and a lot of moving pieces, and this has come together quite well.
We're still working out a few details. We got TC and Otter River pretty much sewn up this year. Baldwinville's a little on the lake side, but Adam and I working out. In the senior center, there might be a little surprise at the senior center.
That's what Santa Claus is all about, right?
That's right.
Surprise, surprise,
Yeah,
surprise.
yeah.
Cold, snow, something good, something naughty.
Depends what list you're on.
I know what side I'm on.
I think everybody getting cold this year should get together and let's have a barbecue. Fire up the grill.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Graves.
Any questions?
No, I'm just rolling with this.
Yeah. I think we all are.
I would entertain a motion for the,
But let's, for the sake of all the permits are filed, right? All the right permits are filed right now with, well, that one, and we filed one for the town.
Right, you have the town property use forms, and by granting these awards, not awards, but what these applications do is they allow you to issue the permit to use the town property as is under your jurisdiction as a board in session at this time. One thing I will note, and I didn't realize this on Ms. Lyons' form that she had submitted to the board, that she wants just a timing thing. There's an additional 15 minutes instead of it being at 4, it would be 3:45, possibly that you would be granting for them to start setting up down near Otter River Road. So, but what this allows, since this is a town event, that it covers under ours. Are we, because of the Otter River stuff, requiring that the school district send an issuance of a certificate for insurance? Or
We will, that will
we
be
will
required.
be, so that would have to be something you would have to consider in your motion, because in the base event that we had presented in the property use form that I had filled out, you will notice that the detail on being on Otter River Road and out near the Historical Society is not on there. And what you'll notice is that these are two town property use forms. The the issuing permit for the one that I signed and submitted on behalf of the office would cover the base event that I had outlined. The stuff that the marching band is doing is the second form that you have in front of you. And that is the one that's going to need the caveat of an issuance of a certificate of insurance for the end of December 2nd.
Okay, that's, what we're gonna get together next week, so.
Thank you for that. Any other discussions or questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the tree lighting event to be held in the town and ending at the Senior Community Center as presented with the addition of receipt of the certificate of insurance. Is that
We're interested.
from
Very
their-
nice, Steve.
from their, what? From their
Narragansett Regional.
regional school. By December 7th. Or before.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths,
Yes,
and I vote yes as well.
thank you, Justice, appreciate it. No, I have like, no.
Oh,
Can somebody get that flyer to me, to put on the web? Do you have that? Jessica?
oh, yeah, I
Okay.
can see, yeah.
Okay, put that on the website.
Should we post any in any of the, I know the senior center has one up already.
Okay.
Post them around town.
Okay, next up, Ms. Hook, I believe we have you next on the agenda. Town property use permit for a wedding, Hook and Tourigny. And if you would please unmute yourself, ma'am. Excuse me?
No,
No, Ms. Hook. She's out there in TV land.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
oh,
So the floor is yours at the moment. I see the email in front of us.
Yes. So we were looking to use the gazebo on August 27th, 2022 of this year, for a wedding ceremony. So it's going to be 35, 40 people at max. That's including the wedding party. We planned on having the ceremony at 4 p.m. and having people go there a little bit before just to set up a few chairs and flower arrangements, nothing big. And whatever we do bring there will be taken out after. Also, the ceremony will be at 4, but we were going to have a little time after just for pictures, and hopefully be out of there by 5:30.
Basically, a little bit different than the time when the request for use, but we can amend and adjust on that. Any questions, discussions from the board?
just amend the time so that.
Yeah, we will amend the times to.
Want to make sure you have a great day.
Absolutely.
Rain or
Sure.
shine.
You're showing 2 to 5 on the application, but you said up to 5:30, so we
You
would,
could even go.
pen and ink change that, that's easy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So do we amend it?
Yeah, when we read it. Enter a motion.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I move to approve the use of the town common and gazebo for a wedding ceremony on August 27th, 2022. Pending receipt of the permit fee and the town's standard insurance certificate from Lauren Hook of Moultonborough, New Hampshire, before the date of the event, and to amend the time of the cleanup to up to 6 o'clock. So 2 up to 6 o'clock.
Second.
Motions and second. Any further discussion?
If we change the permit fees, this would be under town use policy, right?
Yeah, I would say we can let her know once that's approved what the fee will be, since this is not until next fall.
Are you following that, Lauren?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure.
Any further discussion? There was, yeah, it was seconded. Okay, hearing no further discussions. We'll call for the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, Ms. Hook, we wish you a great day and just follow up with the rest of the paperwork, please. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Next up is an action regarding declaration of leftover auction surplus items for disposal. So Lamontagne, would you like to add anything to what we have in the packet?
Mr. Chair, I have the memorandum from our DPW director up on the screen. He's requesting authorization from this board for discarding these items. These were not sold in the latest surplus auction. And by our policy we adopted, this comes in front of the select board for consideration.
Very good. It looks like some of these have been rolling on this list for a little bit of time. Any questions from my fellow board members?
No, it's cut and dry.
So hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to designate for the disposal the list of items presented.
Second. Motion duly made and seconded. Any further discussions? Second call, any further discussions? We'll call for the roll call vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Item L. Actions regarding to authorize the town administrator to negotiate with dispatch union local 155 A as in alpha.
Mr. Chair, this would allow me authority to negotiate with this would be our third union that I'll be negotiating with.
For a matter of procedure and dotting the i's, crossing the t's. Any discussion from the team? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Yeah, we should read it just to make sure. The proposed motion, I move to authorize the town administrator to negotiate with dispatch union local 155A for the duration of the renegotiation of the next contract.
Second.
Motion duly made and seconded. Any further discussions? Second call, any further discussions? And hearing none, I will call for the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Item M, action regarding the 2020 re-precincting. We have in our packets some documentation. Redefining legal boundaries and the descriptions. Very lengthy, as recorded in the registry of deeds on the second page. It's more appropriate we pull up the map. And the two areas in question are, it looks like two saw teeth. Can we zoom that up at all?
I'm trying to.
Should we state the purpose of the redistricting is to even out the precincts population wise?
Yes.
There we go.
So the asterisk says precinct B.
Mr. Chair. Yes. So now folks could see the map. Oh, bear with me here. Town clerk gave me the map and she circled the sections. The yellow is precinct A, the blue is precinct B, and precinct C is off to the right there. These two sections are being removed from precinct B and are being added to precinct A, even out the population of each precinct. Minor adjustments. This is done every 10 years with our census, and it's going to affect any of the senatorial or rep districts either for the, but it'll just have some minor adjustments on our precincts. Can we keep that up or?
Yeah, I'm not gonna read the,
Estimated population
no,
2020.
the way it would be written on the registry of deeds.
I can read this if you want. So the estimated population for 2020 in precinct A would bump up to 2,743 from 2,567 in 2010. And B would go down a bit, 2,758 in 2020, as opposed to 2,800 in 2010. And the population in 2010 for precinct C is a little less. It's 2,646, 2010, and 2,642, 2020. So they're all within, what, 100 between precinct C and the other two precincts. Is the lowest. C is 2,642. So they're all within 100 of precinct C. Sounds good to me.
And then this will be forwarded to the local election district review commission, office of the secretary of the Commonwealth, care of the elections division, Ashburton Place in Boston. Any further questions, discussions from the board? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept as presented by the town clerk the 2020 precincting plan for the town of Templeton and for the board to sign.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and duly seconded. Any further discussions on said motion? Second call, any further discussions on said motion? And hearing none, we will go for the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Griffiths,
Yes,
and I vote yes as well. Up to item N, as in Nancy. Discussion regarding advisory bylaw review.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I would like to move Mr. Jacobs. And so we don't keep him here any longer. then we have to, there's no formal action on that. That was, it's just a little bit of discussion. So it's just board stuff. So I would prefer to have Mr. Jacobs jump in front.
And he's been sitting here in the gallery waiting patiently.
Well, I've like to get him up here, he can get done, and we can allow him to go wherever he's headed.
Hey, I'm ready to go home now.
Just for formality, we should probably make that a quick roll call vote since we are adjusting the agenda. I know we reserve the right, but let's keep it on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I motion to move the discussion of the advisory bylaw and replace it with the study by old business presentation compensation study by Mr. Don Jacobs.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Second call, any discussion? And hearing none, the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths.
Yes.
And I will yes as well. That's it. No. Mr. Jacobs, hot seat is yours, sir. Welcome.
I guess I'm here to answer any questions, John. I think you have a packet from the town administrator. You now have a proposed plan in front of you,
Yes, sir.
which is basically intended to enable the town to comply with the Massachusetts pay equity law. And I mentioned that to you right from the get-go because the process that you now have, well, you haven't been through it, but the process that I've walked through with the town enables the town to comply with the Massachusetts pay equity law, which basically states that as it relates to specifically to gender equity, if you're going to pay positions in order to determine whether or not you're paying men and women equitably, you need to make that determination based on what the law calls comparable value, which means the minimum required knowledge, ability, or skill that someone is required to have in order to carry out their job duties under, quote, similar working conditions. I mention that to you because nothing I've said to you has anything to do with dollars and cents, has nothing to do with the marketplace. This plan that you see presented to you, as I said, enables the town to comply with the Massachusetts pay equity law, and in doing so, develop a compensation plan that's not driven by market data. Now, it's easy for me to sit here and say that to you, as I've said to you before. That's completely different from the way you've been doing it in the past. I think that this process enables the town to manage compensation. And I guess there's two basic criteria. One is to do it consistently, which means you can explain why you're paying a position more money or less money than another, just as you can explain how you're paying an employee more money or less money, but also to do so competitively. So frankly, for the first time, the town will now be able to determine whether or not you want to pay both a position and or an employee competitively, which you've never really determined in the past. So there is a process now that has been followed that has enabled me to present the plan that you have in front of you, consisting of 6 grade levels and salary ranges for each of those respective grade levels. And in doing so, then establish both internal equity within the town of Templeton, as well as external equity in comparison to the marketplace. And that's the basic plan. Where you go from here, once you approve the plan, in my final report, which I will now submit to you, there are some recommended policies that I would encourage the board to adopt if you approve the plan. And the purpose of the policies is basically to put in writing how this plan was developed, which again is something that the town has not done in the past as well. Having a process in writing will make it easier. You'll be able to send a message to your employees relative to how you want to treat them with respect to how you want to pay them. And as I think I probably mentioned to you when I first met with you, the number one issue in all the studies that I've done, and I've done almost 200 of these studies all around the United States. And here in Templeton, it's the same issue, and that is a lack of communication. This process enables you to communicate to your employees how you're going to pay them. Doesn't tell you how much. There's nothing in this study, nor have you asked me to comment on or look at, or is part of the study in any way, shape, or form, what you can afford.
That's a budget process, and you'll continue to make that decision as you normally have. What's different now is that once you make that decision as to what you can afford to spend, in this case, in order to either hire a new employee or to retain a current employee, the real issue then is, well, what's the best way to spend the money? So it's not about what you can afford or what you can't afford. That's not part of the study in any way, shape, or form. This plan that you have in front of you doesn't cost you any money. So cost isn't an issue, frankly, as far as whether you approve or not approve the plan that you have in front of you now. Cost will come into play, obviously, once you decide to spend money, whether, again, it's to hire someone or to retain someone. So I intentionally separate those two. In other words, a plan consisting of grade levels and ranges that does not cost the town any money versus a plan to spend money as it relates to paying an employee. And that's a different process, right? As opposed to the process that's been developed by writing job descriptions and developing grade levels to comply with the Massachusetts pay equity law, and then establishing salary ranges. As I know I've said to you before, using both, we're using 3 criteria, not just the market data. The market data has been used, and the charts that you have in front of you show you how that market data has been used, specifically the survey average midpoint to each group or grade of positions, in addition to the rate of pay of an employee, and then thirdly, how long an employee has been in their current position. So we're using 3 criteria to define the word competitive. Once again, not the market data by itself. So the market data has been used, but frankly, strictly as a guide. And in fact, no one has really paid that survey average midpoint that I refer to as a benchmark. And you see that in one of the charts that you have in front of you. And so that's the basic plan. The driving impetus behind the plan basically is what you require an employee to do. Another way to say that is your job description. That's the primary criteria, frankly, that positions now have been classified, assigned to a grade level, and in doing so, determine whether they should be paid more money or less money than another position. Once again, not the market data. The market data has been used based on developing the grade level plan, in addition to the rate of pay of an employee in 8 years of service, to develop a competitive salary range, a minimum and a maximum, for each of the respective grade levels. And as you'll notice when you look at the charts, the ranges are wide enough so that they're competitive with the market data today. And in doing so, you don't necessarily have to change the ranges every year. One of the mistakes that towns make all the time is that when they approve a salary adjustment, at the same time they approve an adjustment to the compensation or the salary range structure. You don't have to do that with this proposed plan. In other words, each year you would make a decision based on, let's say, new market data, whether you want to adjust a particular salary range in a particular grade level, not necessarily all the grade levels or respective salary ranges, but ones that you feel based on new market data, let's say a year from now, are no longer competitive, or that range is no longer competitive with the market data. But there is a chart that's in your packet that's called the proposed salary range survey data chart that shows you that the proposed ranges are much greater than today's market data. As we're allowing the market data to catch up to you and doing that intentionally so that you don't have to change the range every year. So that's the proposed plan. And again, the only item that you're missing that'll be in the final report that I'll submit to you are the recommended compensation administrative policies that, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, describe how the plan has been developed. And by doing that way, by putting the process in writing, the town is able to maintain the plan going forward. So everyone will understand that it'll become part of your personnel policies as it relates specifically to compensation, how the town is managing compensation with respect to what I call regular non-union positions. Regular meaning employees that are required to work 52 weeks a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
So what you're saying is, if we vote this in and it becomes policy, everybody doesn't get a salary hike. It's just.
Nothing in this study is about
I know.
paying the employee more money. Nothing obligates the town to do that.
Right.
That's a separate process. Okay. And I say it to you intentionally, to separate paying a position from paying an employee,
Understand.
okay? And that distinction, that difference, they're related to one another. Obviously, the
Yes.
employee is in the position, obviously. But paying a position is a separate process from paying an employee. There's lots of ways to pay employees. Once I've hired them or how to retain them. And again, that's a separate issue. Distinct and separate from paying a position.
Clears up some of the fogginess because we're actually defining the billets or the positions to plug somebody into
You mean to hire a new employee?
hiring it.
Well, again, the fundamental difference is when you go through the process to hire a new employee and you're ready to make an offer, a job offer, in other words, a salary offer to a new employee, you'll know whatever salary you're offering to them, whether it's competitive, both internally and or externally, before you make the offer. And so you'll be able to determine, one of the policies that I'll give you will say that it is the policy of the town of Templeton to hire a new employee within the hiring pay band that you see on the
Yeah,
salary schedule chart there, which is basically the first quadrant in each salary range. But the policy will say it is the policy to hire a new employee within that hiring pay band with the understanding that the town reserves the right to hire a new employee above the hiring pay band based on the qualifications of an applicant and or changes in the marketplace. So you always have the flexibility to decide ultimately what's in the town's best interest. Nothing forces you, obligates you, or requires you
Yeah.
to pay an employee any particular amount of money. You'll be able to make that decision on a hiring by hiring basis and decide, again, based on the position and in your opinion, whether you want to pay somebody competitively. I might have shared with you, a good example I always use with employees is, if you look at any employer in any business, frankly, when they go to hire a new employee, some employees are more important to a business than others. Now, in the public sector, we don't like to talk about that, but the reality is that's the truth. And the fact of the matter is that you probably can't afford to pay everybody competitively, given the makeup of the town, Proposition 2.5, and all the revenue constraints and so on and so forth. And I say it to you that way because one of the common concerns that I hear, particularly from elected officials, is they're only thinking about the cost. They're thinking about the dollars and cent aspect of it. But 99% of what I've just outlined for you in terms of the process that we followed to develop the plan that's in front of you doesn't cost the town any money. So if it's not a plan that you're comfortable with, meaning that you understand how it's been developed, you're going to have another reason not to approve it other than cost. And so if there's some aspect of it about a particular position or how the dollars and cents were generated to develop ranges or, whatever it might be, I guess that's well and good. But again, the process is designed to give you the flexibility to decide, as I've said now several times, what's in the town's best interest.
and the person being employed can say, that's not within my pay grade or pay.
Well, no, not within the grade. When you look at, in terms of the current employees, I noticed you, one of the charts that's in your packet shows you where all the current employees would fall within the proposed
Yeah,
salary range schedule.
it did.
Now, I would encourage you to take a look at that chart.
I did.
But that chart, not that one.
That was the one with the grade breakdown? Is that-
It's the one that shows the employees, this one.
Where did that go?
Or maybe you don't have it.
Oh, that one's on there.
Hmm?
That was on the pack.
It's not in the packet. Okay. Well, there is a new chart that you're gonna get that's gonna, and I guess we want to show this to you up front, I guess, because we wanted you to be comfortable with how we got the minimum and the maximum ranges.
Okay.
Okay, once you've done that, then there is another chart it's right here. All this chart simply does is it takes the ranges that you see on that salary schedule and just plots everybody where they are today. If you look at another Excel spreadsheet chart you have, it's called salary range, the survey data, you'll see all the current employee rates of pay.
Okay.
If you just take a look at that chart for a second, it's an Excel spreadsheet chart. If you look at the header at the top of the page, it says proposed salary range ranges to fiscal 22 survey data. Looks just like this.
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Okay. Anything you wanted to know about, that's it. If you look at the header at the top,
This one with the grades.
right, you see the 6 grade levels, right?
Yeah.
You see the employee salaries
Yep,
in the second column. If you look over in the far right-hand column, you see how long each of those employees have been in their current position.
Yeah.
So everything you want to know about your current employees that are in this plan is on this piece of paper. Okay, all I've done is I've taken this data and put it onto an easier, picture's worth 1,000
Oh, I
words.
see what you're
So it's
saying.
easier for you to see where everybody,
The color coded where they fall.
What you're gonna
into,
see-
how fair are-
I mean, it's the same data that's on that salary range chart. This is just easier to
Got
look at.
It is
okay.
easier, yeah.
What you're gonna see is that most of your employees today
Yeah,
are all within the first quadrant of the proposed range structure. Now, that's good news and bad news. If I'm an employee. The good news is there are some employees that are still in the first quadrant, but they haven't been in the position more than 3 years.
okay.
Okay, because that's one of the policies that I'm recommending to you establish, is that it is the policy of the town of Templeton to pay new employees competitively within 3 years of employment.
I read that, yeah.
Now, that's for you to think about, for you to consider. Why 3 years? Well, it's a reasonable time frame. And I say 3 to give you the time, which means to spread the cost, to bring someone from what they're current, where you start somebody or where they are today, up to what you now see as a competitive rate of pay, which is the minimum of what we call the market equity range.
Mhm.
It's the red column or
Yeah.
row.
Right, I see.
It's not a column, it's a row. That you see in each of the grade levels. So we're defining competitive for an employee to be anywhere between the minimum of the market equity range and the maximum of the market equity range, not a fixed number. Okay, so it isn't just the midpoint or the median that we're talking about. We're talking about above or below that benchmark number, which means, again, survey average midpoint. Okay, so if you look at that previous chart, the one you have in front of you, that salary range and survey data chart, if you look at the fourth column, you see it says proposed salary range benchmark up at the top.
Yeah. The
That
third
benchmark
column.
number that you see for grade level 1, for example, is $17.86.
Yes, sir.
Everybody sees that?
Yes, sir.
That number is calculated by taking the survey average midpoint, adding it up and divided by in this case, by 3. Because there's 3 sets of data in grade level 1. Everybody follow me in that regard? Take the survey average midpoint, and I'm looking at grade level 1. So for example, for the dispatcher, survey average midpoint was $17.38. Everybody sees that number? Right in the middle of the chart, right up at the top.
Yeah,
Then the next number says $18.94. That's the survey average midpoint for the library aide position. If you want to know where the survey data comes from, there's another set of charts in your packet that shows you which towns responded and how much they pay their respective employees and so on. So this data, those 3 middle columns, comes right from the survey data.
okay.
Okay? So the survey average midpoint is nothing more than a guide number, what I call a benchmark, that we're using to develop a minimum and a maximum for each range. So in other words, I take the benchmark number, which in grade level 1 is $17.86, and I multiply that by a percentage to give me the minimum. In this case, it's 80%. Okay? That's the number I use. I use 0.80
Yeah,
times $17.86 gives you a proposed minimum of $14.29. That's why you see odd numbers. Okay?
Mhm.
Then I take the minimum number of $14.29 and I multiply it once again by a percentage, in this case 60%, to give me a proposed maximum of $22.86 for grade level 1. And it's the same process for each grade level.
I get it.
Okay, survey average midpoint, which is calculated by the salary data, that is the midpoint data that we've collected, and we average it for each grade level, and then that becomes the benchmark or the guide number. No one gets paid the benchmark. It's strictly a guide to develop a minimum and a maximum to, so that we can say the
It's a
proposed
guide.
range structure is quote unquote market driven.
The
Okay.
optimal word is guide.
Correct. Unlike the way you've been using market data in the past to determine how to pay someone. We're not using market data that way at all. We're only using market, and the reason why we're doing it that way, frankly, if you stop and think about it, frankly, the market data is just so unreliable. It's just not accurate, right?
Right.
We want to use it. You want to know what your competitors are paying a library aide or any other position for that matter. But obviously, it doesn't mean that's what you have to pay someone.
Mhm.
That's your decision to make. You have the flexibility to decide, once again, whether you want to pay someone competitively or not. But unlike the way you've been doing it in the past, now you'll know whether you're paying somebody competitively or not. Yes or no, and if so, by how much?
And you have a reliable guide for budget for the future. So if you know you've got to bring some raises in for 3 years, in 3 years, you have a forecast.
Well, yeah, let me pick up on that. You're right to a certain extent. You'll have a reliable number that you feel you can afford to spend each year, as you do right now. When you
Okay,
go through the budget process, you have a line item in your budget for salaries, salary adjustments, right? There's a line item in your budget.
Yeah.
Right, it's broken down for each department, probably. You total that up, equals X amount of dollars that you're gonna appropriate to pay your current employees more money, whether it's a bargaining group or anyone else. You do that right now.
except for the level fund.
I'm not, have you ever level funded salary? Has there been a year where you haven't had any salary increases
Is that this year?
this year? No.
Real? Oh, okay,
I know the town administrator gave you salary increases, what, about a month ago.
okay.
So once you make that decision as to what you feel you can afford to spend for the purpose of paying people more money, just like any other line item, this is just one particular line item in your budget. So you'll make that decision with your finance committee and however your budget process works here, just the way you've always done. Right? You're gonna come up with a dollar amount.
Mhm.
Now, what I'm recommending to you to do, though, is when you come up with that dollar amount, don't refer to it as a percentage, the way you've been doing. That's misleading. When you communicate to your employees, tell them what you're gonna pay them in dollars and cents.
Okay,
They will understand that,
okay.
but they do not understand what percent means. Because you know and I know, if you tell me I'm gonna get a 2% increase, well, what I'm gonna have to do is go back and multiply my salary today by 2%
Right.
to give me a dollar amount. And what do you think the first thing is I'm gonna say to you? That dollar amount isn't even enough to cover the cost of my insurance,
There you go.
let alone cost of living, and so on and so forth. So employees think of increases in dollars and cents. They do not think of it as percentages, because it doesn't really mean anything, right? You know, a dollar amount is equivalent to a percent,
Mm.
but it's the dollar that I put in my pocket, not the percent.
Mhm.
Okay, so one of the recommendations I will make to you in my final report is that when you talk about paying an employee, whether it's to hire them or retain them, communicate to your employee what you're actually doing, and that is you're paying them a dollar amount, whether it's, you know, on a cent per hour basis or annually, however you want to describe it, but it's dollars and cents. It's not percentages. And once you decide how you're going to pay them, like I said, in dollars and cents, the reason why I'm so adamant about that is that if I make more money than you do, and you and I both get $1,000 increase, right? Your percentage increase is going to be greater than mine. So instead of you and I getting a 2% increase, the same percentage, by paying people a dollar amount, the people that earn more money will get less of a percentage than the people that earn less. That's more equitable. In other words, you're weighting the percentage increase for the lower paid employees. The ones that aren't being paid as competitively going forward will get a greater percentage, depending upon what the dollar amount is, obviously, right?
Mhm.
Than the employee that's getting paid more money, that is already being paid competitively,
Mhm.
compared to how you've been doing it, where you've given everybody the same percentage. And I know the unions love to do that. They want to be treated equally. They think it's equal, but in reality, it's not. Because you and I both know within a defined period of time, they're at the highest salary rate in their particular salary range. No wonder they want to get a percentage increase as opposed to a dollar increase. If I'm a brand new employee and the higher paid employee is getting the same percentage I am, I'm not putting as much money in my pocket as you are, who happen to be getting paid more money. To me, that's reverse equity.
I get it.
It's inequitable, in my opinion. But again, the pay equity law pertains specifically to how men and women are being paid that work for the town of Templeton. This plan addresses that issue. And you see some of the individual positions today that are in this plan where there are women in those positions that today are being paid less than the men in comparable positions. That's called inequity. That's in violation of the law. This plan addresses that issue, corrects it, because everyone is being paid based on, again, what the law calls comparable value.
Mhm.
Okay, not once again based on the market data. I know I've said that 3 or 4 times because I'm really trying to put market data in its proper place where it belongs. It's out there, we're gonna look at it, but it's not gonna be the final be all and end all criteria to determine how we're gonna pay someone. Years of service and the rate of pay are also factored into that calculation or that decision in terms of how much you're gonna pay somebody. So as I mentioned, when you see this chart that plots everybody,
Yeah,
and if you really look carefully, in fact, you don't even have to see this chart. If you look at that salary range and survey data chart, go over and look at the next to the last column on the right-hand side of the chart. And you see all those percentages,
current employee rate of pay.
and they're all minuses, right?
Yeah.
Everybody looking at it?
Well, there are two that I noticed that weren't necessarily minuses.
No, every one of them is a minus.
If you look at town accountant and sewer superintendent, I believe there's no minus
Oh,
there.
I stand corrected. Yeah, your town accountant, when you look at the current rate of pay, just compare that to the market data. Yeah, we collected market data from 31 to 39, almost $40 an hour. You're currently paying your accountant $60 an hour. And that's why that's a plus. You know, that's an anomaly. It sticks out.
It does.
But look at everybody else.
Say so.
Look at the minus numbers, which tells you how much below current employees' rates of pay are to the benchmark in their
Right.
respective grade level.
That's,
And you'll see that there's some minus numbers that are 50%, 22%, 25%, 39% below the survey average midpoint. And then look at the next column over, right after that, and how long they've been in their position. So anyone you see in there that's been there more than 3 years, whose current rate of pay is more than 15% below the benchmark, by my definition, is not being paid competitively. You have a number of employees today that fit that category.
What if the position did not officially exist
If it didn't exist.
4 years ago? If the
Well,
position.
Yeah, that's a
title-
good point. Yeah.
If the title, the
Didn't
position
exist.
has changed, the
Yeah.
position title has changed.
Well, that happens.
And the number of people in, like, the Board of Selectmen's office.
Mhm.
At one time, there was 3 people in there, then there was 2,
Mhm.
and there was administrative assistants. This was their title.
Well-
And then, over the years, like the executive assistant to the TA came about, is listed in the budget in 2000 fiscal 21.
Mhm.
Before that, it was titled a different position.
Right.
So it could be misleading as far as saying someone's been in that executive assistant position for 8 years, when the position really hasn't
the name of
existed.
it,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but
the
Well,
title.
the person may have been, let's say, in their current position, let's say for 8 years, just to use a hypothetical case, right?
Mhm.
And over that 8-year period of time, the position or the department may have changed, how they do things changes, technology comes along. Lots of variables affect or change the position. All we're doing today, just to help you put it in perspective, is focusing on where somebody is today. Not where they were 8 years ago, or not where they're gonna be 8 years from now.
I know, but I'm taking what you said about you look at the percentages and they're negative, and how long a person's been in a
Right.
position, and if they've been in that position.
What I'm
for more than
suggesting, more than 3 years.
But technically, the position or the title did not
But
exist.
that doesn't matter, because all we're really focused on, all I can concern myself when I did the study is what exists today. All I really focused on was what an employee's current rate of pay is, how long he or she has been in their current position, and then how does that compare to the marketplace? So by using 3 years, remember, one of the things I really believe very strongly in is to give you flexibility to decide how you want to interpret and how you want to ultimately decide how to pay someone. So you're not locked into only one way to do it, right? So you have the flexibility to make a decision literally on an employee by employee basis or a position by position basis, based on what you require someone to do, meaning their job description, and then taking into consideration market data, how long they've been in their current position and their current rate of pay, in order to determine where do you want to go from here. All I'm saying to you, let me just make one last point. All I'm saying is, as a result of that analysis, as a result of that process of looking at where everybody is today and how long they've been in their current position and comparing that to the market data, you have a pretty significant number of employees today that are not being paid competitively.
So
Now,
what I,
All I mean by that is what I just said. What you want to do about it, if anything, is up to you.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm trying to get you to the point where now what I'm really saying to you this evening is what I'm asking you to do as a board, once you approve the overall plan, grade levels and salary ranges, then you're ready to look at the employee aspect of this, but not until then. So you approve the plan, hopefully, grade levels and salary ranges, and you approve it based on understanding how it was developed. So hopefully you're comfortable doing that. Once again, it doesn't cost you any money. So you're gonna have to have another reason why you don't want to approve the plan.
so,
And once you've done that, then what I'm suggesting is then look at the employee aspect of it, but not until then.
My other question is, on one sheet, you have a grade level 3 for a deputy treasurer collector. But on your fiscal 22 salary survey summary, you have that position as an assistant treasurer collector. I'm just wondering if,
Oh, the title was different?
when you went out comparing, if
No, I wouldn't have, the reason I wouldn't have been, when we send out a survey instrument, and you'll see the survey instrument in the final report, we included a brief description of what we mean by the title. Okay, so whether it's an assistant treasurer collector or a deputy treasurer, collector, it wouldn't make any difference, because we would have explained to them the purpose of the position, irregardless
I
of the
just
title.
look at this as, residents looking at this and it can say, well, how come there's different titles.
Yeah, to be
And
honest with you, I don't even,
Yeah.
I can't really tell you, I don't know. But
and
it's-
how were the grade levels arrived at?
the grade levels were developed, once again, not based on market data, but based on how positions were compared to one another using a position rating system that measures the comparable value of each position. Comparable value means it measures the minimum knowledge, ability, and skill that is required of an employee in a particular position and how that compares from one position to another. And that's what the pay equity law establishes as the process to do that, to determine how to pay the position based on comparable value under similar working conditions. Okay, so measuring that comparable value, knowledge, ability, and skill means what it says. What do I need to know? What skill do I need to have? What experience do I need to have? But it also takes into consideration the physical requirements of the job, where the job duties are carried out, the work environment, the occupation risks, and so all aspects of the job, all of that information now is in your job descriptions. That wasn't the case before. Your previous job descriptions were not accurate, meaning they didn't contain enough information for me to be able to measure that comparable value, and in doing so, compare positions to one another. That's how the grade level process was developed. So grade level, if you look at, there's a characteristic chart in your packet that describes the characteristics that define each of the grade levels. So grade level 1, for example, is entry level responsibility.
Yeah.
The highest grade level are your major department heads. Major meaning most complex. Grade level 5 are your department heads. What separates 5 from 6 is the complexity of managing a department. Some are more complex than others. Okay. Grade level 2, it says works under the general supervision of a department head. General supervision is measured. It's defined by the job duties that the employee is required, all of which are governed by established laws, rules, and regulations. So a position in grade level 2 under this proposed plan, every one of their job duties, when you look at their job description, are governed by established laws, regulations, or policies. And if you ask someone to do something that's not governed by a law, rule, or regulation, the definition of general supervision says you need to check with your supervisor before carrying out that responsibility. So it's a way of describing responsibility from the entry level responsibility up to what I've now outlined are 6 levels of responsibility in this plan, consistent with your organizational structure. So we just didn't come up with the 6 grade levels hypothetically or, top of our head or whatever, just the opposite. Those grade levels are designed to match how the town is currently organized in terms of levels of responsibility. And that's how the number was developed, based on writing a job description, using a rating system to measure that comparable value, knowledge, ability, and skill. And then by doing so, developing each one of those grade levels. And by doing it this way, by the way, What it's really intended to do, if you stop and think about it, it's intended to allow you to explain it. Because what's behind each grade level is a series of decisions that are made with regard to evaluating that comparable value characteristic, right, for each and every single position, which basically gives you information to use to explain it to someone, which is why, you remember I said right from the get-go, opening lines of communication is probably the most important aspect of this particular plan over anything else. The employees will know how they're being treated. They'll know how they're being paid. They'll know whether they're being paid competitively or not. Now, it doesn't mean.
And they'll know if they're doing the right thing by the town too, are they fulfilling their.
Well, that's up to, that's a subjective, I don't know about that. But I can assure you that what they're gonna understand is how they're being treated with regard to how they're being paid. And then you're in a position to talk about, well, where do we go from here relative to paying an employee? And as all I can encourage you to do, and I guess the last thing I want to mention to you, because it's one of my opinions or biases, if you want to call it that, is I would encourage you as a board to make a distinction. Now we're talking about employees, not positions. And make a distinction between exempt versus non-exempt. Exempt meaning employees are required to plan what to do. Your managers, your department heads. Non-exempt, they're not required to plan. So they're not the same. One has more risk than the other. What I would encourage you to think about and encourage you to do is to pay your non-exempt employees in a different way than you pay your exempt employees more money. Right now, you're paying them the same. They all get, let's say, a 2% increase, which is the way I think you've been doing it in the past. What I'm suggesting is that you develop a different process for your exempt employees to pay them more money than you do with your non-exempt. For the simple reason that your exempt employees, you require them to take on risk. You require them to be accountable for how their department functions. I'm the police chief. You expect me to be responsible for the police department. And that's true of every other department head. So that responsibility is what separates the exempt from the non-exempt employee. I would only suggest to you that you should pay them in a different way, more money than you do employees that don't have to plan what to do. Okay. And I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to give you some advice with regard to how to do that. It's not difficult to do. It's very, very simple. But you have to want to do it.
I do have a question. I've been trying to formulate it in my mind. When you came up with the employee rate of pay percentage to benchmark.
Yep.
It just seems like you went by how long that person was with. So there's a difference between how long a person is with the town as opposed to how long a person was in the position they have currently.
In some cases, it
with
can
the
be different. In
town.
other cases, it's not different. I've only been in one position since I come to work for the town. There are people in that type of situation. You have others that have been in, let's say, multiple positions.
Working their way
Most
up
of your
the
employees
ladder.
have been in their current position. They haven't moved from one position to another. I think the overall majority of these employees were hired where they are today. And the fact of the matter is, as I said, that percentage number is just to give you a red flag, is to help you identify those individuals that are not being paid competitively and those that are. And it's a mix. But I'm afraid to say to you, it's unfortunate. Well, I shouldn't say it's unfortunate. That's the wrong way to say it. I take that. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. You haven't defined competitive before.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't about
According
blaming
to
anybody.
state
It's saying-
standards.
It's not whether you've done anything right or wrong.
Right.
That's not part of the study. But now you have defined competitive. Or we've defined competitive by,
According to state standards.
well, in accordance with the state law, which is the pay equity law. But now we've defined the word competitive in a consistent way so we can explain it. And you've never done that before. And I don't mean that negatively. I don't mean that critically. I'm stating a fact. And now it's a good opportunity to take advantage of that. And as I said to begin with, to communicate to your employees, let them know, how do you want to pay them? Do you want to pay them competitively or not? They're going to know now. There's no secrets here. Everyone understands what's going on here, which is the way it should be in the public sector, unlike the private sector. In the public sector, everybody knows what everybody's being paid. And so by defining competitive, it just helps to explain it to everybody in a more clear, concise manner than perhaps the way it's been done in the past. which I think is a win for everyone. It's a win for the town, and it's also a win for the employee. And, you know, right from the get-go, and as I know I've said to Adam many times, in my opinion, having done this for as long as I have, if my objective was to develop a win-win for everyone, with no exception, a win for the Board of Selectmen, a win for the employees, no matter whether you're exempt or non-exempt, there's a win for everybody in this plan. Hopefully, by doing it that way, everyone can see a reason why they want to support it. They want to adopt it. Not just the Board of Selectmen, but I would argue more importantly, your employees. And keep that in mind. Unlike the way it's been done in the past, they now will understand this. They'll see it and they'll be able to understand it. What I'm saying to you, is, and I've said it to them, is what I've encouraged them to do is when you finally see the plan, I would encourage you individually to decide whether you think the plan is good for you. And if you think it's good, let the selectmen know about it. Because I'm sure you've heard at times, negative comments and this, that, and the other thing. But now what I'm giving you a heads up in a sense and saying to you, your employees, I'm encouraging them, whether they do it or not is up to them. Whether they have an opinion or not, obviously that's 100% up to them. I'm only sharing with you what I've communicated to them. And I've said to them when I've met them, when you see the final plan, sit back and decide whether you think it's a good plan or not. Is it going to help you or is it going to hurt you? I think it's going to help you. And I've explained to them why I think it's going to help them, but they have to decide for themselves whether they think it's good or bad, just as you have to do the same thing. So it is a collective, sense, it's both you as selectmen, as policymakers, but now your employees are going to hopefully better understand how you're paying them. But once again, you don't have to pay everybody. Nothing forces you to spend any money other than what you want to do. Exactly. So it's always, the bottom line is always based on what you can afford. You're absolutely right. And that has to be the way you do it, particularly under the, the fiscal constraints that you live on. But I would only, again, suggest to you that the more important question is not what you can afford, particularly from an employee standpoint. They don't get to decide that. They don't get to have input into that. But they do have an opportunity to ask you the best way to spend the money. And that question has not been asked by anyone that I know of from talking to your employees. I think they're going to ask that question now. They're going to ask you, what's the best way to spend the money once you decide how much? And that conversation hasn't been had in the past, I don't think. That's a new conversation. I think it's a good conversation. I think it's a win conversation for everyone because it puts it right up front. We're an organization, we're a team, we work together in the true sense of the word. And again, in the public sector, we don't like to think like that. But, there is a way, separates well-managed organizations from ones that are constantly struggling to get along. And I think one of the characteristics of a well-run organization, public or private, is how well you communicate to your employees.
Transparency.
Absolutely. You still make the final decision though, and they understand that. You have that responsibility, but they also have an opportunity to ask, questions with regard to, well, how do they want to be paid more money? Another way to say all that, what I just said, that's running through my mind, it's the old manager me. What I've said to your employees, you don't have to be organized to communicate, to get the selectmen to talk to you. Unfortunately, all too often, employees think the only way they're going to get you to talk to them is to organize, because now you have to talk to them. You have to negotiate, as I heard you talking earlier. Why wait to do that? I always like to say, why wait to get hit over the head to the point where now, whether you like it or not, you have to talk to them. Why not talk to them because you want to talk to them? Because they want you to talk to them.
Right.
And they know you're not talking to them. They know it. Trust me, they do. And I think that's a given. So the question is, do you want to take advantage of it? Hopefully this process will make you feel more comfortable to communicate to your employees. When it's all said and done, hopefully you have a plan established. And last but not least, a plan that you can maintain, which is why putting it in writing. So I'm going to give Adam the policies that I've been alluding to that will describe everything that I've done in conducting this study. And what I'm asking him to do is to present those policies to you for you to approve once you approve a plan. Okay? And the policies, again, do nothing more than describe how the plan was developed in writing. That's the purpose of the policies. And by having those in writing, when there's turnover, whether it's on the Board of Selectmen or employees, wherever there's turnover, everyone will see in writing how the town is managing compensation. That's the win for everybody, for everyone. Elected, appointed, makes no difference to you. I live for the day, I always had, when I was a manager, I live for the day when the unions would come to me and ask for a benefit that non-union employees would have. This might be one of them. Remains to be seen. Hopefully it'll happen. I don't know. Any questions? I'm sorry if I ran on too long, but
No, it was a good explanation. We're definitely looking at this through a different lens.
you know, the hard thing here, you know, and again, I've worked with so many different municipalities. Most municipalities, I hate to be negative. I really don't like to be negative, but I got to be honest with you and say that most municipalities don't want to manage compensation. That's the issue you're going to have to decide right now, not right this minute.
No.
In approving this plan, make no mistake about it, do not approve it if you don't want to manage compensation. Because this won't manage itself the way you've been doing. You know, where everybody gets that percentage increase across the board. That's automatic. It's sort of like putting it on, you know, autopilot. This doesn't work on autopilot. It won't work. You have to manage it. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one very last thing, because I've just talked about managing. One of the policies I'm going to recommend to you is a more clear definition or clarification regarding the administration of compensation versus the policy-making aspect of it. What I'm going to recommend to you is that you establish a policy that says it is the responsibility of the town administrator to administer compensation, not the Board of Selectmen. Okay? And what I mean by that is that it would be the responsibility of the town administrator position to decide who gets paid, how much they get paid, and when they get paid, not the Board of Selectmen. You set the policy. Let the administrator carry it out, just as the administrator does with all of your other policies. I would argue, well, why should compensation be treated any differently? Okay, so with that thought, I'm sure that'll give you some things to think
Oh,
about.
my mind is like,
Hopefully, you know, again, recognizing that
well,
distinction.
there's a fine line between what we need to do because of state law to be fair and equitable and what we're going to do in Templeton. You need to. come
Well,
up
and
with
how you
some-
carried it out, you know, there's lots of ways to carry something out or to implement something.
Is it, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
That, right now, we're doing a percentage. If we switch over to this, is
Mm-hmm.
it gonna promote stability for the town administrator to budget in advance? I'm
mean
thinking
in
of
terms of
Sandy Polar,
employment?
Tim. Remember Sandy Polar said that he tries to let his town know in advance whether they're gonna have an override, what's going on in advance. Like, what I'm, you know what I'm trying
Well,
to
to a
say?
certain degree, I think it will, you know, I don't want to, you know,
Stability,
mislead
I'm
you.
looking for stability
Right.
and planning over time, increases where necessary,
Right.
and how to get those into the budget. Ahead, thinking ahead,
Well,
forecast.
in my opinion, it clearly will result in employees feeling better about working for the town of Templeton, because they'll know how they're being treated. And right now, they don't know. So that's a win for them, for the employee. Now, you and I both know that employees, you know, when they decide, you know, what they want to do, where they want to work, and so on, there's lots of reasons why, you know, people take a particular job or they move from one job, you know, over and above in addition to what their actual rate of pay is.
Yeah.
Remember, really what we're talking about this evening is a value statement that I'm encouraging the selectmen to make with regard to how you want to treat your employees.
I get it,
By
and I
approving this
actually,
plan, you're sending a clear value statement message
yeah,
to your employees that you want to treat them fairly. Fairly means consistently. But in doing so, you then need to decide, do you want to pay them competitively or not? Again, that's your decision. You know, you decide what's in the town's best interest. If you decide to implement a plan, a compensation plan, and you follow the guideline that I'm going to suggest, that within 3 years, if you're not being paid today competitively, subject to appropriation, subject to what we can afford, remember, that's always the bottom line, right? You're never going to do something you can't afford, because you can't. So based on what you can afford, what I'm encouraging you to adopt is a policy that says, within a reasonable period of time, I put the number 3 out there for you to think about. I think that's a reasonable number. You may think 3 is too short based on what you can afford. You may think 5 years is more realistic. I don't know. I don't know what you can afford or not afford. I just know in working with municipalities over the years and look, and by the way, that's one of the reasons why I want you to have this other chart. You'll be able to see in dollars and cent terms very clearly in black and white where I am today on this chart and what's it going to cost you to bring me up to what is now going to be a competitive rate of pay. You'll cost it out.
Yeah.
And then you can add up the total. Well, can you afford it or not? And if what some towns wind up doing, based on what they can afford, is they decide, well, we can't afford to bring you from where you are today to a competitive rate of pay. We just can't afford it. But what we are going to do is over the next, say, 3 years, we're going to incrementally increase your rate of pay so that at the end of that 3-year period of time, you will be paid competitively, both internally as well as externally. Now, an employee may react and say, no, I want it today. I want to be paid competitively now.
Yeah.
That's their prerogative, but hey, welcome to reality. The reality is we can only do what we can afford.
Mhm.
But at least now we know based on what we can afford, what's the best way to spend the money. And that's why I said to you earlier in that context, thinking of once you
I get
appropriate
it.
the money, think of different
Which
ways to spend it.
positions, which
Right.
positions
And you
are
can literally go right down that list.
weighted.
And you can see for yourself, when you look at this chart, it's not difficult, it's very simple. You'll know whatever, anyone that's in this first quadrant, that has been there less than 3 years, no problem. Because they haven't been there that long. But anybody that's in that first quadrant that's been there more than 3, there's some people in that first quadrant that have been here 8 or 9 or 10 years. You'd like to think they'd be paid competitively today after working for the town for 8 years.
Mhm.
That's common sense, right? But doesn't mean you have to.
So you mentioned the word 3 years. You're going to draft a policy or make your policy recommendations. We review it and then say we do like tweak, can we tweak it?
You could do it, absolutely. It's your policy.
We would be reading it.
I'm just
and then
giving
we
you a
could
suggestion. It's
tweak
not
it.
etched in stone by any means.
Yeah. Like
I'm trying to
said,
get you to
3
think
years,
about,
but-
remember I said, some towns have come back to me and said, well, we've looked over based on what we can afford, and we think 3 years just is too short a time frame. We can't afford it.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
And they adopt a policy at 5 years or 6 years.
Yeah.
There's no magic number.
Okay.
It's what works for you. That's the number, right? And I couldn't know that number because I don't know your fiscal situation.
Okay.
But going forward, as you've been doing, right? So we're not going to change the budget process one iota. All I'm saying to you tonight is once you decide what that amount of money is that you can afford for salary adjustments, then stop and think about ways to spend it. All I'm suggesting now is competitiveness now as a criteria that we've now established. We've now defined it.
Mhm.
So everyone's going to be treated the same.
And I agree with
And
you.
then you can, if I were to argue, if I were to play devil's advocate in a sense, I would argue or say, well, if I'm not being paid competitively, why shouldn't I get paid more money than someone that's already being paid competitively?
Mhm.
Just based on, a level playing field, right? I'm clearly not being paid competitively today. I'm down in this first quadrant and I've been in my current position for more than 3 years. That meets the definition of not being paid competitively. I would argue, well, therefore I should get a larger amount. I don't know how much, but it should be more than somebody that is being paid competitively, as far as a minimum increase,
Mhm.
okay? Now, for the exempt folks, remember I said, think of them in a different category or a different group. I really strongly recommend that you give really serious thought to rewarding them, paying them more money based on what they accomplish. Because that's what you expect them to do. They're doing it right now.
Mm.
You expect them to accomplish whatever it is they're doing. Why not reward them for those accomplishments?
Got it.
Your non-exempt employees don't work like that. They're
Yeah.
not required to do that, but your exempt employees are. They want to be rewarded based on what they accomplish.
I can tell you, a town employee in confidence talked to me and exactly what you're saying. They don't understand their position.
No. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just that we haven't talked about it. We haven't communicated so that you and I both understand what my position entails. What do I need to know? What skill, what pressures am I under? How difficult or whatever the case might be as it relates to what I'm doing. But remember, the key there is to be able to measure that, not just talk about it hypothetically or in
Yeah.
non-measurable terms. You need to be able to measure it. which is why, as you asked earlier this evening, actually, like I've been here a while, how do we come up with the grade levels? We came up with them, as I said to you, based on measuring that comparable value. So it's quantifiable. The numbers are on paper. And I can look at them. I have them right here, which allows me to explain it.
It does,
It's not hypothetical.
it does.
It is subjective, however.
And it allows us to get a better grip on it. I
Well,
appreciate it.
yeah, I like that term getting, I like to say it allows you to feel more comfortable,
Yeah,
when you have to make these tough decisions. And these are not easy decisions to
no,
make
they're not.
with regard to paying people more money. In fact, if anything, I'm making that decision a little bit more difficult. Because I'm suggesting now, unlike in the past, you now have a competitive criteria that you can apply to determine why one person is going to get paid more money than another. Not based on cost of living, not based on years of service, but based on competitiveness. And you've never had that criteria to use before.
I know that certain positions have been bundled too, but they haven't been compensated for the bundle of things that they've.
Well, and again, when you really look at the positions and where they fall on this recommended plan, it's not difficult to understand why positions are at one grade level and not another.
Yeah.
The employees understand that. But having said that, and I know you talked about it earlier, when positions change during the course of a period of time, you'll now have a process in place when those changes occur, new technology, or you add another staff person, or you delete a position, whatever the changes are, you'll have a process in place that will enable you to decide, well, should the person be paid more money or not? And if so, how much? Okay, and they may not deserve to be paid more money, depending on what the change is. Remember, it doesn't always increase. Sometimes it decreases. What goes up goes down. Employees don't like to think that way, but it happens. So it doesn't always grow. And automatically rising to the top of the range, what I didn't mention before, and I just thought of it, when I alluded to the market data and developing ranges that are wider than the market data, we intentionally want to give employees lots of room to grow. When you see where they are, 90% of your employees are literally down in the first quadrant. They all have an incredible amount of room to grow under this proposed plan. The obvious question is, how am I going to grow? How do I get to the top? That's what I want to know if I'm one of those employees. You're going to have to answer that question. All I'm suggesting is first separate them in two pieces, exempt, non-exempt, and now let's talk about ways to pay you more money. And there's lots of ways to do that, not just cost of living, but I'd like to use the term market rate adjustments, but also what they accomplish, particularly for the exempt folks. It's very, very easy to measure. It's very, very easy. So easy that I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it, because it is very easy to do. As long as you allow the administrator to administer. That's the key. That is it in a nutshell. Should you not be comfortable doing that, and I really mean it very seriously, this plan really won't work. If you have to administer it, it's going to take a lot of your time to do it. And it's going to put you in a very awkward position, because every time you meet with me as an employee, we're going to have to meet in open session. Because you can't meet as a group and not meet publicly. Think about that. It really makes it extremely difficult to do, if not impossible.
Mr. Jacobs, I have a question that came in off of the live feed on our YouTube feed. Yeah, we get these occasionally.
It's good.
We have a list of comparable communities, the comparison communities.
Yeah,
When you did the survey, was that list employed, or did you survey other communities? Just
No. I listed who you wanted me to survey. And I can tell you specifically, we surveyed for this particular study. And again, because we surveyed these communities this time, doesn't mean you have to do it next time either. So you always have that flexibility. Athol, Air, Dudley, Munson, Montague, Orange, and Shirley. Oh, sorry, and also Townsend and Winchendon. So Athol, Air, Dudley, Munson, Montague, Orange, Shirley, Townsend, and last but not least, Winchendon. And it's not as important who we surveyed, is how we use the data once we collected it. So you may decide next time you do a survey, I to be honest with you, I'm not sure why Dudley's in here, but they're here. Didn't hurt to put them in. But you may decide next time, Dudley's down in southern Worcester County, but we don't need to include them next time, for whatever reason.
Part of what drove that, and that's the list I believe you were given by our town administrator, our advisory committee has a group of comparable communities, and that is, so the answer is yes, we have followed the list that we've been using for a
Yes.
bunch of other comparisons and
Right. Yes, we did.
decisions we've been basing.
Yes, I do. And again, obviously, when you look at the detailed chart, how each community responded and for what positions and so on, by averaging the data the way we did, we do that intentionally to minimize the discrepancy in the data. Because obviously they pay all different amounts of money, and we rule out the lows and the highs of the data we collected. We didn't use the minimum data. We didn't use the maximum data at all. Did away with it. We only used the midpoint data for that reason. So, so we used it, but I think we used it in a way that was a little bit more conservative or a little bit more careful to help us develop a competitive salary range for each grade level. So again, going forward, you'll make a decision each year, each fiscal year, whether you want to change ranges or not, and if so, by how much. The odds are pretty good when you look at that salary range, the survey data chart, when you look at the percentage at the bottom of the chart, your proposed ranges right now overall are about, no, they're right on the money, really. The proposed range rate is about 2% greater than the survey market data, which isn't a lot overall. So next year, when you look at the marketplace and you see what adjustments have occurred in terms of increases in pay, then you can decide whether your current ranges are still competitive. A lot of that will depend upon where people are within the range. But again, as I've already pointed out, 90% of your employees are going to have a lot of room to grow. They're not going to go in 1 year from where they are today to the top of the range, at least not automatically. So it's going to take them some time.
But they can get something they can try to count on.
Yeah, but again, you'll get to decide how you want to pay them more money, as I keep saying. And, you know, it's one thing to show somebody, you know, a maximum amount of X amount of dollars, but you need to be able to say to them, well, there is a way to get there, but it's not automatic. Okay. So it's like a carrot and a stick kind of thing. You know, it's there, you can get it, but you're going to have to earn it. Okay. So the town has to have a win in it. The biggest one is we have to be able to afford it. And then we'll talk about ways to spend it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your patience. I know this really, there's a lot here. I appreciate that. I'm fully aware of it. I wanted to get this done as soon as we could to give you time to think about it, make sure you're comfortable with it, consistent with your next year's fiscal budget process. Okay. So hopefully, you know, this gets factored into your budget process in a timely way so that then you can decide, you know, whether to approve the plan or not, along with the policies, and then decide how much you can afford, and then you go from there. Then you really have a plan that I think is designed to benefit everyone.
Is it also appropriate to ask how it would impact the taxpayers? Like, is this a good thing in the long run because we have a plan? It's something that we're going to be budgeting and we're in control of going forward. It's transparent.
Oh, it's gonna follow the overall budget process.
Right.
Things will get proposed, things will get presented, things will get reviewed. It goes to the town meeting floor, so ultimately, yes, it does.
Okay.
I mean,
But
from my
there is-
perspective, you're sending a message to the taxpayers that the town is very, you know, feels it's very important to manage compensation effectively.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not let compensation manage you.
Okay.
That's a nice buzz line.
Yeah, right.
That's not what you can do for
Take the bull
compensation.
by the-
So what compensation can do for you. But again, I think it's, you know, from the taxpayer's point of view, the win is accountability. A win is getting the job done and doing the best job possible, quality service and so on, and rewarding employees for doing it, which right now, again, you haven't been doing. So I think that's a real plus for the
Yeah, we
taxpayer.
want to hold on to our employees. From what I understand, the most valuable employees have been in their positions the longest and have gained the most knowledge.
You can see who they are in the
And
chart.
they can work their way to that.
Right. And if I'm a new employee and, you know, I hear you telling me that, you believe in the value of paying me competitively, and you can tell me how you're gonna do it.
I think I asked you
It's
the
gotta help
question
me.
about taking people through to retirement.
Well, I can't see how it wouldn't make me feel better about working for the organization. Now, it doesn't mean I wouldn't want to change, who knows what somebody winds
Somewhere
up
else for
doing.
more money, whatever.
But it's not because you're not treating them fairly. It's not because you're not,
Not on
really
us.
valuing their, their work. And again, it all starts from opening lines of communication. That's really what it's all about. The money part of it, well, it is what it is. you know.
Right. But spell it
Welcome
out.
to Prop 2.5.
Yeah, right.
That's a whole nother argument for a whole nother day.
Don't say
You're not kidding.
that.
You're not kidding. Yeah, I'll tell you. But again, I think that you should be able to hopefully implement a plan as we've been discussing it without any fiscal constraints to prevent you from doing it.
Okay.
Because right from the get-go, obviously, that's been my number one concern. And I've really worked hard to try to take cost off the table.
Yeah, and show us.
And so, to try to help you then make a decision that you think is the best one.
And according to state law too, that's equitable. and fair.
All I would ask is, once you finally make that decision, would you let me know?
Do we have to make, is this,
Well, this is process and policy, getting and establishing how we're going to manage it. And then we develop the policy, how we're going to implement it.
That's right. That's a great way to put it. Policy comes last.
okay,
But first be comfortable, make sure you know. And if there's something you don't understand, if you're not comfortable with it, by all means, ask the question. And I'm happy to come back and meet with you. I'll do whatever you want me to do, and I really mean it. What I, really try to pride myself in doing is helping you as much as I can. I'm not here, I don't punch the clock and I don't budget how many times I'm gonna come to Templeton. None of that applies to me. That's not how I do work. I'm here because I know how difficult this is to do. I've been in your position many, many times. I know how hard it is to change the way you've been doing it. It's not an easy thing to do. This is the most difficult thing to manage, in my opinion, of anything you're going to do. Compared to anything, this is the hardest right now. And you just have to look around the other municipalities and see why I'm saying that. Unfortunately, that is the case. When I was a manager, if you said that to me, that would get my attention because I want to be the best. I don't want to be second best. I want to be the best. And if I can't be the best, there's got to be a good reason why I'm not the best. That's just who I am. And hopefully that's who the town of Templeton wants to be. Be the best you can be. And, that's a question of, how you value yourselves and what do you think is important. So, it's enough preaching.
I think I can sum it up very eloquently for you. You came into here, we had pretty much a blank slate. Now we have some guidance, recommendations to build a framework. And then, of course, that's going to have to be looked at, revised, adjusted, tweaked as we go along.
Most definitely. It's not, there's
but
no
we are-
final product. That's
Even with what we have in front of us, we're so much further ahead than where we were prior to walking in the door.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I really believe very strongly that you will be much further. At least you're moving in the right direction. And you'll move as fast as you can move based on what you can afford. And that's the message, by the way, to send your finance committee. They get concerns about, well, what's this going to cost us and all that. That's not the issue we're talking about. We're trying to manage compensation
creating
more
a
effectively.
win-win situation and not
There
a
you
hostile
go.
environment.
And it's not driven by cost.
Transparency.
It's driven by your values. Who are you? Who you want to be as an organization. And your employees are waiting to hear from you. Believe
I
me,
know.
they are waiting to hear
I
from you. So
know.
don't make the mistake of not communicating to them. That'll be you couldn't make a more significant mistake by not communicating. Now that we've opened the door, you've opened the door. You invited me in. You might have thought about that before you did that.
That's Adam's fault.
Yeah, he's the one. Blame Adam. It's all Adam's fault. So no, I really can't encourage you enough, to really take,
Everything,
that step
I like
forward
the
and,
classifications you came up with and the grade.
yeah, and this is not final. This is a working draft, so if you see positions you have questions, concerns about, just as you remember the minimum maximum, I just explained to you tonight how I did it. You might think they're too wide or they're not wide enough or whatever. You have that opportunity, that flexibility to, adjust these numbers any way you
Yeah.
want to.
I also like the fact that you gave us who's not getting paid, like you said, weighted. Where you're gonna spend the money, who's not getting compensated.
Right.
and where do we want to go from here, and who's overcompensated? You know,
Well, I would use the phrase overcompensated. There are people that are being compensated competitively,
Yeah,
not to pick on your town accountant too much.
okay,
I'm sure he's doing a great job. And then there are some that aren't being paid competitively.
yeah,
And the question is, more importantly, where we go from here.
and men and women too. You're saying it's
Right.
gonna level the playing field between men and women.
Yeah, I mean, that is really what motivates me to do this kind of
I
work,
appreciate that.
is the gender equity issue.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, 90% of the time I'm preaching to the choir of, it's just not an issue that's resonating very strongly out there.
I have 3 girls.
Yep.
I hear it all the
Amazing.
time. I hear it
And I'm
all
working
the
with a lot of women that are in managerial positions. And I keep waiting for them to get excited or get involved. And they're not. I
time.
can't
Yeah,
force
but
them.
my
to.
kids.
Trust me, if my daughter, she'd be all over you.
The other piece of this, to go with what you just said, what this does not show us is the full-time versus the part-time positions.
No,
That's intentionally not portrayed
Yeah.
here,
that's right.
because we're looking at the position, not the person.
Correct. And there are some positions, as you well know better than I do, that are what I call temporary positions, meaning you pay them a fixed amount of money, or you don't require them to work 52 weeks a year. You pay them when you require them to work. They're in a separate category. They're in a separate plan. Now, I've written job descriptions for some of the other bargaining positions, like DPW or in the highway department, as well as police and fire. So that is in the report. But here you see a proposed plan. The only reason you don't see a proposed plan for those is because they're in a bargaining group. And we couldn't be talking about them now in
Yeah.
open session if we wanted to. So we won't, will we? I won't.
Beyond acknowledging there's a CBA out there.
They're out there
They're out
and they're
there.
watching. I can assure you that they're watching. We
Yes.
want them to watch. We want them to know what we've done. This is the day when they want to come in and say, explain to me what you've just done with those
Yes.
non-union employees.
Yes, yeah.
That was always one of my personal career goals. Is I
Interesting.
lived for the day when I had given non-union employees what I consider to be a benefit. And then the union would come and say, I want what the non-union employee is. Supposed to go the other way around.
Yeah,
So. All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
cooperation and I wish you continued success.
thank
Thank you for the
Thank
Thank you.
in-depth presentation and
No
answering
problem.
questions.
All right, like I said, if I can help answer any questions, or concerns you have, any changes you want to make to this proposed plan, by all means, feel free to obviously make changes. And I'm happy to help you.
Perfect.
And particularly when you see the final, you see the policies in writing, you'll better understand what it is we've been talking about. But there's really only, I guess, one other chart, which is that employee profile chart.
Yeah.
Which just simply plots everybody, doesn't change any numbers or anything.
Will we get that? Or
Yeah.
will we just-
You'll give them that chart, right? Good.
Well, Don, thanks for your
All right,
patience.
thank you.
and-
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, same to
I
you.
hope you can rest easy now.
Yeah. No, my daughter just had a baby, so
Oh, that's
We're,
right,
uh,
Grampy.
we're not resting.
Any further cross discussions before I call for a motion? So I move to adopt the proposed classification compensation plan for the town administrator to administer the plan within appropriations. New employees to be hired within a hiring pay band and the understanding that the town reserves the right to hire a new employee above a hiring pay band based on qualifications of an applicant and or market conditions. Employees receive annual salary adjustments based on a dollar amount, not a percentage. Employees are at or below the first quadrant are to be paid competitively within 3 years, subject to appropriation. Employees who are paid competitively are to receive an annual market rate adjustment. And employees are eligible for an additional compensation based on accomplishment merit.
Second.
Motion made second, any discussion? Second call, any discussion? Call for the vote. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Griffiths,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That was a lot done.
Yeah. I'm pressing on the line.
And I appreciate the input from our YouTube stream, and I hope that the answer provided answered the question. Okay, back to item N. Advisory bylaw review, Mr. Bennett.
Yes, I requested to have this for just for this evening, just for general discussion and see where how the rest of the board feels on this.
I love it. Sorry.
I have a copy, I printed out copies of the existing advisory committee bylaw as it reads now.
Thank you, Beth.
And my initial thoughts or ideas, I printed out as well.
Oh, you did? I don't have to do that.
And my additions, changes or anything are in bold. My thoughts on this are to change, and this is following going along with the recommendations from the latest update for the Department of Revenue financial review that was originally done in 2009. And they requested to come back and they looked at what they had originally proposed and what we had done, where we are in the meantime. So I have proposed 5 registered voters and a slight change to be more in line, I think, with the times would be none of members, none of whom shall be an elected town officer, an appointed official receiving a salary, or a town employee. That would open it up to somebody, say, on the Conservation Commission, or, and I know, you know, it's been the past, it's been, oh, we all gotta be all independent, but where we are today versus where the bylaw originally came from and this independence was when it was the job per town bylaw and state law, specifically Mass General Law 39, Section 16, which says the advisory committee would present the budget unless you have a bylaw that states otherwise. We now have a bylaw that says the administrator with the Board of Selectmen will create and present the budget. So the role of the advisory committee, whether, you know, everyone agrees on it or not, has changed. And it even says that in the Association of Town Finance Committee handbooks, that the state statutory authority of the Finance Committee, Advisory Committee, does not vary from community to community, but the role and process does. And that was another recommendation in the DOR financial review, was to look at the role of the advisory committee. So, and us, like many other towns, and I'm at community 192, I think. I've been going through the municipal directory, looking at town by town, the bylaws, how many members, and how they're appointed, how vacancies are taken care of. And 5 and 7 is like the average numbers. There are some communities that have 20, 13, 3, 6, but 5 and 7 is what you see most. Most are initially appointed by the moderator. There are some committees of chair of the Board of Selectmen, chair or a member of the Finance Advisory Committee, and the moderator. There's a few that have the town clerk in there in place of the moderator. Some are, there's a few that are elected, and some are appointed by the Board of Selectmen. So it's, but again, the majority is the initial appointments by the moderator. And midterm vacancies, again, they go the gamut. They will be filled, I'm at, I think 13, where the committee fills the vacancy until the next annual town meeting. Some communities don't even address it. Some, they go to the Board of Selectmen. Majority are by the moderator. Again, there are some by committee. And the ones that were elected, they follow the Mass General Law, which that usually falls on the Board of Selectmen with the other members of that elected body. And there's not a lot of them that are elected, but there are some out there. So in the history of the advisory committee, the planning board, conservation, right off the top of my head, there was originally 9 members of the advisory, and then at some point in time, it got reduced to 7. The planning board was the same. Conservation, I think, was 7 and went to 5. Most of the reasons given, hard to get people to volunteer to have a quorum. We're at 5 members right now of the advisory committee because the chair just resigned effective Friday, this next. So again, with the DOR recommendation would be move the committee to 5 members and open it up for members of other committees to serve on it. They only make recommendations to town meeting, and by statute, they oversee the reserve fund. By state law, they have to be in with the Board of Selectmen if we choose to adjust the spending limits on revolving funds mid-year without having a town meeting. The same with the end of the year financial transfers. Without having a town meeting, the state law is the advisory committee and the Board of Selectmen. And the same thing with the reserve fund. I mean, they oversee that unless you have a town meeting to ask town meeting to amend their vote and take money from the reserve fund and put it in another fund to cover shortfall. So to open it up and have a bigger pool, I thought that their role has changed. And if you're on the rec committee, if you're on this committee, even though you do have a budget, and again, this is just my idea, thought to expand the pool to get more people involved, even though we are making it smaller, allow more people who want to volunteer, because sometimes you get on these things, you get on any committee and you go, wow, there's a lot to do here. Or your job changes, your family changes, this changes, and we're not the only town that has these issues. And then under appointments, it would be, just change the first one would be appoint 1 member per committee for 2 years, and then you still have the 2 for 2 years and 2 for 3 years, we're for a total of 5. When I get to vacancies, that's where I think it's one of the places that made the biggest change is right now, it's the moderator and the committee. If the moderator doesn't have anybody within 30 days of a vacancy, the committee can't fill the vacancy. I'm proposing that we put this more in line with the rest of the committees and boards and have the Board of Selectmen appoint it, fill the vacancy. And again, it would only go till the next annual town meeting, where then the moderator could appoint someone to fill the rest of that term. So if somebody had 2 years to go and they leave in January, the selectmen appoint them until the annual town meeting. The moderator would say, I'm appointing you, if you want to volunteer for another 1.5 years till that term is up. So the change would be the advisory committee would notify the town administrator, who will determine if there's any interested registered voters with interest forms on file. And if there are none, then the vacancy would get posted on the town's website and get put out. And when they have someone who wants to be on, the Board of Selectmen would fill the vacancy, and that appointment shall expire at the final adjournment of the next succeeding annual town meeting. And the select board at that same time would instruct the town administrator to notify the town clerk and the advisory committee of the appointment. The moderator at the next annual town meeting would appoint a successor for the unexpired term. Review of the warrant articles. I basically removed what was in place and I changed it to match the section of our bylaws, chapter 22:6. And that's what it says. And that is the section of the bylaw that we just removed the 2 days from. So basically, we still have an advisory bylaw section that says how they review warrants and how it will be done. And then we have another section that says this. And if you look in the copy of the well, I didn't bring the 22nd, my apologies, but I can send that out. But that's what I did. Basically took 22:6 and put it under 9.4. And left the 2 days where they have to have their report.
Yeah.
And access to information, again, I looked at that, it's a changing role, so compelling department heads and so forth, and free access to all the books, records, blah, blah, blah. To make recommendations, to make reserve fund transfers, revolving funds, and end of the year expenditures. If we require that members of the advisory committee receive a budget book, the quarterly reports, financial and otherwise, the monthly expenditure reports, they get that now, but this would be in the bylaw that they automatically get it. As well as the report of the town administrator as often as it is put out, whether it's weekly or if it goes to bi-weekly, or, twice a month, or again, that was mentioned in the DOR report. And if you're going to make a request for a reserve fund transfer, they would get the information of the specific fund, where the money is needed to go and the amount and so forth. And I added a section that says meetings, and it states that the advisory committee shall meet jointly with the select board whenever there is a request to consider the spending limits of revolving funds, end of the year financial transfers, or any request for town reserve fund. I looked at several of our comparison communities, and Ashburnham for one. The advisory committee, the select board, and the capital meet jointly to do all of these. They discuss the capital budget, they do reserve fund transfers, they do end of the year transfers. Actually, it's not a fight, and it's not, no, we can't meet and we're independent, because you're not.
Right.
And the state law says you have to both be involved, so let's free up a little bit of our volunteers' time and just have one meeting. And by the way, the town administrator or whoever's going to be involved doesn't have to go to 2 meetings, or possibly 3. Because you can go to an advisory committee meeting and goes in there, makes the request, and somebody pops, question, and it's like, I'll get back to you that. If we have a prepared meeting planned with both entities, we can get this all, we could get all that done. And it's efficient, which is one of the things that was put forth when they brought Prop 2.5 around, was to make government more efficient. I don't know if it worked or not, but that was the statement why they made, and that's why I think this would be more efficient for the town and for the volunteers. Just, again, this is just my ideas, and I don't want any action. And the last two, I left pretty much as they are, the annual report and the committee liaisons. It's just my idea
Streamline.
to see if the board was interested and to talk about it and propose something. And I was asked to do it now because saw the message from the town administrator that implement stuff for the warrant, he has a time frame by January. And I just think, we should attempt to, as a board, if we're gonna propose something, at least have it in a draft form by then. And I brought the copies. I'll email you if you want. You can look up 22-6, so I can send it to the town administrator. He can send it out. And you all could take this home.
I read this already.
And this is our bylaw is
Streamlined,
pretty
doable.
detailed because there are some that have like 3 sections or 2 sections. There'll be a finance committee of 7 members appointed by the town moderator. They will get recommendations on all articles to any town meeting, blah, 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 and that's it. They don't address vacancy, they don't address anything. 2 towns, the finance committee makes their recommendations before they publish them. 7 days before they publish them, they will send it to the Board of Selectmen. There are some towns out there that do things, they're very direct, and others, they're just a couple, 3 articles. But even the ones that are still have the finance committee doing the budget, books, records, all this stuff, and have that another column and all of that. I don't see in the meeting minutes and stuff where there's this, well, we're independent, we can't work. They get together with the Board of Selectmen and discuss the budget, and you can see it in their bylaws. So, again, it's this, just my thoughts, my idea. I want to give it to the rest of the board. I'll email this to Mike, the chair, so he'll have it and take it home, and maybe our next meeting would be ready or something, just
For a motion.
it's a starting point. Like I said, I just want to see how the rest of the board felt about making the changes. Instead of being reactive, oh, well, let's change this date, let's change this, no. Again, I was going through this and I've been thinking about this for a while. And
I like the cleanup of the language. It's streamlined. It's easy to do and enforce. It's not so detailed that nobody can figure it out or uphold it, but it's detailed enough that we have a direct, a direct way to go.
the directory language about there will be a joint meeting. It's not inventing the wheels, because there are bylaws out there in other towns where it directs the finance committee to do this or that. Again, it's we had a financial review, and that was one of the things that they talked about. The membership, the role. Again, the administrator, there's been a change in the budget process at 2014 annual town meeting. By the way, the advisory committee's recommendation at that time was we support a change in the budget process. So this is just my idea of the starting point. I don't know how the rest of the board feels or not.
Grateful. I feel grateful.
Well, I think this just, in summation, this now puts it in writing. And if we're going to consider this as adoption of the bylaw, it is what to follow for the current procedure we're following, but it's not really outlined and spelled out as a procedure. We've been fortunate, we've been hitting the mark all along, but that could change.
And And it did for a while with the 14 amendment that said that the town administrator and the board of selectmen would create, but it did not spell out present. Even as Mass General Law 39, Section 16 specifically says, the budget belongs to, unless you have a bylaw. Well, we had a bylaw, but unfortunately, when there was an amended motion on town meeting floor, they didn't amend the part about the budget in the advisory section. So we kind of had two bylaws saying two different things. Somewhere in, it should be in the office, I got a copy of it somewhere. Advisory asked for a legal opinion. And the town council at the time said, it doesn't look like, you know, did town meeting mean to add a section 4A, or did they mean to replace? Because they actually made an amendment on the floor and replaced the creation of the administrator with the administrating doing the budget. So we lost the section of finance. And that was the question that town council had was, did they mean to have a 4A and it got overlooked, or did they mean to do this? And his thoughts were either the selectmen advisory committee get together and craft something, or take it back to annual town meeting for, you know, let town meeting sort it out. And that never really happened. So then eventually, I think in 19, it was, the exact year, there was an amendment to the bylaw that the selectmen and the administrator will create the budget and present it. So that took care of that gray area. And then the budget format, that went to town meeting, and that got voted on. Town meeting has spoken for like third or fourth time. They don't want to do a line item budget line by line by line. They don't want to do that. That's why they pay people and elect people. I'm thinking based on their votes. So, and then if you watch, you know, I don't know, I just thought that it was time to do something and get some specific language in the bylaw. But not just because, well, I'm not gonna be here forever, you know, next year, year after, boards change, advisory can change, selectmen can change, and history shows that it does. So you would have something here that says, hey, you know, there won't be any of this, well, no, we can't meet.
192, there's like
Yeah, no
361. You got a little ways to go.
Yeah.
But there's 292 towns with a town meeting, form of government and selectmen. And some of there's charters, some of they still have bylaws, some are mixed. Administrators, town managers, some just still have operate with the board of selectmen running the town, and you get the towns with 180 people or 230. I was surprised they even had a website. I really was.
I was surprised to find out a local town has 2 board of selectmen, just 2.
So, well, they got 2 members, and they've only, you know, they got a 3rd spot open. But anyway, them little towns, they're like that.
Yep.
And some of those little towns, they come under the exception if you have less than 3,500 people. You know, selectmen can serve here. They get a wit because their pool is so small.
Interesting.
But it's like I said, there's a wide variety of bylaws. Some of them are pretty specific. Some of them are 1 article, 2 paragraphs. Some are like 6 paragraphs, but they don't touch vacancy, for example. I guess they just assume or by tradition, well, everybody knows we do it that way, but I just thought it was better in paper. And that's my thought on the advisory bylaws, to try to get something specific, take away gray areas, and this is the way to do town business, so it's efficient. From just a getting things done standpoint and volunteer time standpoint. It's just, I mean, we're volunteers, they're volunteers, there's a lot of committees, it's governance by committee, and we're all volunteers. I mean, we're not like that high paid crow down at the end of the table. So That's my thing on that bylaw.
Hold on.
The second thing was, and I would like to wait on this one until the chair is back. It's just, actually, I'll give, save it up. This just talks about the special override. Or special.
Not
override.
override.
It's, well, you can fund it by an override, but it's a special purpose stabilization fund. I think you'll find it on page 2.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
which is
this talks-
established one to put money aside for roads.
And there is a special override to fund a fund like this. It goes to town meeting for one vote. Unlike regular overrides, this is, it would be specific to go into this fund. Has to go, I think, 3 years, and it can be stopped at any time. It can be decreased. The Board of Selectmen can do it and can skip a year. Say, you know what, we're gonna freeze this override. There's some funny specifics in there, but it's a special override for a special fund. And my idea for it was have a road or infrastructure stabilization fund to start putting some money aside, because if we don't start, we're never going to get anywhere. And Chapter 90 money is basically, some towns they save it up. They don't spend this year's allotment. They save for 2 years, 3 years, till they build up some money so they can do a project. You pave a road and there's steel in the road, drains or water, and then you tearing up the road. Nice hot top, because, well, we didn't have the money to put new drainage in, so we thought, we rolled the dice, and now we got a sinkhole, so we got to dig up that nice paved road and fix it. And there is a pavement study that done in 2018, I think. It's on the website, and I think in $2018, it was about 22 million to get all the town's roads in good condition.
So can I interject? My son sent me a Harvard Business Review article on how to attract industry into your community. And one of the things that it said, communities would be well served to consider investing in basic infrastructure as a time-tested formula for success. If your transportation system or roads are crumbling, you're going to have a much harder time creating innovation, economy, jobs. But if business leaders can collaborate with civic leaders to redesign how workers efficiently get from point A to point B, opportunities abound. But it just mentioned that a town to attract businesses, you need basic infrastructure in place.
That's what they look for. You got town water, you got sewer, you got drainage, you have, good roads, sidewalks. The town just spent $200-something thousand on a sidewalk machine. The state redid Route 68 and over in Otter River, and half the sidewalk area that they put new granite curbs in, you can't go down the machine because some of the light poles, I remember, they moved, but the other half of them, they're still in the middle of the sidewalk. There are street signs in the middle of the sidewalk. There are mailboxes in the middle of the sidewalk. It's going to take, and that's a whole another thing. There is complete streets for grants. There are shared streets grants to help try to fund some of this. And that some of that covers planning and design, which is a big chunk of upfront money to get a project done and to go out for other grant money. It's just a big machine, and it is what it is. It's, that's the way the government is and stuff. So an interesting thing I did, considering to fund to get going on funding, creating the stabilization, and then, once you create that fund, well, no sense creating it if you ain't got no money to put in it. So you have to think of ways how you possibly could fund it. So free cash. In 2018, the town had received $1,042,588. In 2019, it was $1,572,732. In 2020, it was $1,455,158. In 21, it was $1,327,538. In 22, it's $1,131,704. And I recall Carter saying something about, I think it was in 19, when it, that big free cash number come out. I recall him saying something that would not be sustainable as far as staying up that high. It's just the way things work. But free cash could be a possibility to use for our reserves, but we would have to follow the DOR's advice and get away from using it to backfill a budget and buy like reoccurring things. We need a plan, a capital plan of like, we bought a new truck in 2019 for the highway pickup. I can't find on paper where we plan on getting rid of that truck. We're gonna keep it till it's scrapped. Are we gonna keep it 4 years, 5 years, 3 years? To cycle
Yeah,
stuff around. We
yeah.
just bought a loader, we just bought that sidewalk machine. How long do we plan on keeping it? And, 10 years, 5 years? We don't really have, we've been good at spending money and buying stuff, and it has dropped the maintenance budget way down, but when we have this new equipment, do we have a plan of how long we're gonna keep these vehicles?
Instead of running them
Because
into the ground.
Because the reason that we needed so much money was because everything went into the
Yeah,
ground.
we
It was
ran
basically like scrap. So the other possibility, and you cannot directly say, well, we're gonna take excise money and put it in here, but you could transfer it as long as you don't plan on directly funding that stabilization fund with vehicle excise tax, which we have been estimating revenues very conservatively. In 18, it was $1 million straight up. 19 was $1 million straight up. 20 was $1,025,000. 21 was $1,050,000. 22 was $1,025,000. But in 18, we collected $1,080,577 actual. In 19, it was $1,152,640. In 20, it was $1,181,385. In 21, it went down a little bit, $1,148,700. The tax recap sheet just filed, it shows actual was $1,229,187. So again, that is a possible funding source where we are budgeting off a conservative, contrary to what some people would put out, we are budgeting conservative on the revenue side, and we have excess revenue coming in. We should be planning on using it again from the DOR recommendations in that last review. Another one is the meals tax, and that was sold or mounted at that was at the annual town meeting 2018, and there was a flyer put out that would be used as a mechanism to pay the lease on a 1-ton truck for the highway and a cruiser. And they estimated we'd collect about $42,000 a year. I say they, the Department of Revenue. So 2019, we collected $41,709. In 2020, we collected $50,573. In 2021, we collected $55,457. In 22, the first quarter, it's $18,095. And the first year we did it, the first quarter, we collected about $4,000 something dollars. Now in 20, that was the last quarter, the the pandemic, it went down to about 8,000 per quarter, but the next quarter, it went back up. So you could use the 18,000 as a projection. I wouldn't say 72, but I'd say we'd probably get like 60, 65. So just from the meals tax, which was presented as a funding source for capital, that could be a source of 40,000 into the road stabilization fund. I mean, because I don't think, I don't care how you sell it, if you put an override right now in front of town meeting, they'd probably say, Bennett, are you freaking nuts? Get out of here. You know, they'd run you out on the rail. So eventually, maybe, you know, and we could, you talk to the town in Arlington, I know their finance committee, they tell the town,
Yeah.
in 3 years or 5 years, we're gonna do an override.
Yeah.
And every time period, we're gonna do an override, just to keep up and to be able to afford to do the things that people want. And the number one things people complain about is riding down this crappy road, you know, can I sue the town? Can I sue the state? You know, bad rims, bad this. And it is. You want industry, business to come here, people will move here. Sidewalks, good roads, dependable drainage, so you're not flooding out places, town water, and you don't want to be paving roads and having to cut into them every 2 months because you got a water main break. We have a big project in the works, $2+ million for a water main over there in sections of Alderville and the Main Street Bridge over by the old paper mill. You're putting in potentially that housing thing in the school. You want good, dependable water mains. It's stop loss of water sales, and you don't have water main breaks, which, you know, you got to replace that pipe unplanned. So
Yeah, smart pipes now.
it's just, it just makes sense.
Yes.
But again, this is not something I was looking for. I just wanted to see what the board thought and what their thoughts are about going forward with this. Because the last time I brought it up, it really wasn't, you know, none of the rest of the board thought, yeah. It was not ready for prime time and et cetera, et cetera. And that was a few years ago, about 3. And so we're still at 0 for planning for our roads.
Oh, horrible, because we do want to attract industry, we want to.
It's not fun, it's not easy, but this board is charged with overseeing the management of the town and our biggest assets. I mean, you can say employees or, you know, buildings and the roads and stuff, but I would argue the roads is right up there with everything, because you buy a nice new house and, oh yeah, I got a brand new school. My little car here, I'm buying new tires or rims because bam, 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 you know. My kid can't walk down the road because there's no sidewalk. I can't ride a bicycle because the potholes are bigger than my bike tire. I mean, just, and it's really no exaggeration. There's a lot of bad road. You're gonna drive up a bad road going home tonight. That's fun. South Road is a fun road to go up to. I mean, and we're not the only community.
No, but it's
But
good to have a plan in place
I'd
and
like
move
to,
forward.
You know, I'd like to get us
Be
to start,
proactive. Great, I like the
getting
fact that
things
we
going.
did the
And
house.
Bob Sozak he did go for a grant. It was sizable amount of money to get a road done right, the drainage, to this, to that, but, you know, we didn't, but if you don't go for it, you're not gonna get it.
Right,
So, I mean, he did go for one, and he's doing a good job with what he has. You know, that little bit of chapter 90 money, 300-something thousand, I mean, the little work he did on Baker Lane, I should send it out and share it with the rest of the board. I got an email from a resident, and they were very thankful for that work being done. In fact, they went to the special town meeting, and I requested a list to see who went, and I thanked them for showing up, and their response was, the least we could do for the work that y'all doing for us.
Mm.
And getting there myself, Bob Sozik, and town administrator met with residents on this little private road called Stevens Way. And one of their main complaints was the end of Baker Lane. They thought that was a private way. Somebody asked something, did something, and I went and talked with the assessor, and oh, no, she said, oh, no, the records, that little stretch is, his road is town property. So I gave the good news to Adam and Bob and went up there and got that part of their concerns taken care of and got it paid. And they're all appreciative of that. And that's, that's Bob Sozik doing the DPW, them guys, he's doing good things. They, if he had all the money in the world, well, we'd get all the roads done, but we're not there yet.
We got a new street sign too, Baker Lane.
So, but again, if we don't start somewhere, I don't know how much money we could have in a fund if we would have created it 3 years ago, but I know how much we have because we didn't do it.
Yeah.
Zero. So again, I was just tossing
this
this
would
out
be-
there as ideas for the board.
Sorry.
Not yet.
So this will be just for the establishment of this infrastructure fund for the annual, right?
So,
You hear that?
yes.
Yep.
So,
Kind of a
again, there
jump
was
start.
just a couple of thoughts on a couple of projects, things that I think need attention, or I just wanted to see really how the rest of the board thought. I know how I think, but. And again, do some research, read that stuff. I just printed it out, save you from going and hunting it down and printing it out, or however. I print stuff out,
Appreciate it.
killing trees, I'm not doing nearly as bad as there's one down at the Amazon rainforest, but that's all. That's my two things that I had to share.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So I appreciate the time.
Appreciate your time
And the other.
and your effort, Jeff. Top notch. Like Don said, be the best.
Brings us up to board member and administrator comments.
Yeah.
All I have to say is the fifth graders and that, and hopefully it comes together. I think the superintendent is planning on, or it's expecting or planning, or there's a way to go to the school committee meeting on the 1st and present that
Yeah.
formally. He's trying to work something out when we maybe, if any selectmen could be not
Particularly the
necessarily at the school
veterans,
committee, but in the, like the lobby of the middle school, get a picture with some of the students or something.
particularly
But
the veterans, the three of you.
that's just, them kids, they just pushed my button and in a good way, and I just can't. They did such a great thing, and it's far and wide, and them little kids just don't have no idea what they did. And it's so cool. That was, I don't know who initiated it, but the kids did the projects, they did them.
Michelle.
And I want to
It's
find out the kid who did the Godzilla, because that's really cool. But that's my comment. We're gonna present that and make sure the kids know what they did, the impact it's had, and how cool it really is. Because I think those kids, they need to hear it. They deserve to hear it. That's all
I'll
I have.
tell you,
Thank
being part of that experience elevates my happiness. It brings me great joy, and I like feeling that way. I choose joy, and it did come up at the school committee meeting. About the superintendent saying how well that went over. So I just, so a little school committee report. I wrote down the budget. The Senate released the ARPA spending bill and excess revenues so they have to have conferences to discuss it. The House already had theirs released. Chris talked to Ann Goby, and they said by the summer of next year, there should be some clarity. The business manager just transferred the elementary donation. They made an elementary donation account and moved money, $7,614 into that account. And she's concerned because of that big flood on Royalston Road, they're still doing the repairs, so she's retained the bus for the year. That wasn't planned in the budget. So that was a concern because the extra bus to go around that, where that flood was. You remember that big storm we had? You sent me pictures. So he did, Chris did bring up the vets cards, and, you know, he was thrilled to, he watched the meeting, he was thrilled to see our reaction, and he's excited to receive that certificate. The logo, there's no movement at the state level regarding the use of the name Warrior, but Friday, I guess there was a positive response because the new logo did come out, and there were two choices. The Turkey Day games at Murdoch, the football game was canceled because of COVID, the playoff. The turkey trot's gonna be Gardner to Faldonville on Turkey Day, Thanksgiving. And then Kate Calise gave, so that was Miss Geister was the business manager's report. Kate Calise did a wonderful, and I won't go into detail, I did write down a lot of notes because she was very detailed in her assessment, the way that the school assesses the kids. It's called MTSS, Multi-Tiered System of Support. And I just wrote down, there are 3 tiers. It's a structured system with 3 levels or tiers to provide students what they need in a systematic way. And I loved her point that she said, through 3rd grade, students are learning to read. After 3rd grade, students are reading to learn. The 3 reading intervention teachers, Tim, you'll be interested in this. 1 is from additional COVID funds. That's how they get paid. And 2 are on grants. So there are Title I funds, and you'll have to watch the video to get the details. I just wrote down there are 2 categories, school-wide versus targeted intervention. And we are school-wide, and everyone benefits. If it was targeted intervention, only those students with the intervention would benefit. So on the website, I did go to their website today, and there's a winter gift drive going on until December 15th, and I have it on my home screen. Otherwise, go on the website if you want to help kids in need over the holiday season, and that's going on until December 15th. Their next meeting is December 1st at 5:30, and it's definitely focused on budget updates. And Margaret said it's a first cut at numbers. The following meeting is January 4th, and it's a Tuesday at 5:30. And today I found an interesting fact, and I just wanted to share it with people to consider, because it took me it made me listen. In listening to the book, The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk, MD, I quote, it said, economists have calculated that every dollar invested in home visitation, daycare, and preschool programs results in $7 in savings on welfare payments, healthcare costs, substance abuse treatments, and incarceration, plus higher tax revenues due to better paying jobs. So I thought that was, there was a study on this rough area where they started home visitations, and they followed those kids for 20 years. And they had a higher rate of, a success rate of high school graduation and college graduation, and moving on to being independent and successful. And then, so I just figured I'd share that because, again, it's all about, like Dawn said, where you're gonna spend your money and what do you get, what do you get bang for your buck. I'd highly recommend that book in the long run for anybody. They do a European model, and they compare the crime rate in like Scandinavian countries with the crime rate in the United States, and very fascinating information. So I think that's about it. I appreciate, I'm slacking in money tax, sorry, but I did, and I've been looking at other things. I've been trying to get more educated on the latest products. My son invited me to a worldwide webinar hosted by a man in Denmark on the latest technology and innovations in water, plastic, gardening, sewer. And it was from presenters, scientists from all around the world. And they posed many different scenarios of why they developed their technologies. So it just kind of blew me away. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope to see you on December 5th.
Thank you for that. Couple quick comments, and they are going to be brief. I just want to acknowledge, Mr. Bennett addressed it earlier, and I wanted to acknowledge as well. Mr. Rivard is stepping down as the chair of our advisory committee. He is also resigning entirely from that committee. I wish him the best. I thank him for all the work he's done for the town. And I know he's expressed his desire to at some point again come back and do some more service within the town, and we look forward to having him come back on board with the team. As we prepare our Thanksgiving celebrations this week, I just bear in mind our men and women all around the globe protecting the freedoms, our public safety personnel who will be working. Those are the jobs that never stop. So just keep them in your prayers. And
I think Adam was going to mention that it was Kaylee McLaughlin. Kaylee and McLaughlin's her last name.
Yep.
She'll be moving on. She was a town employee for a year and a half, and she's accepted a position so that we're going to have an activities coordinator position open at the senior center. But we're going to miss her because she brought a lot to the table over there. She's a good team player and very sunny disposition. She did a lot of good work, so we thank her for that. You can see the town website for the job description of what's opened up.
that was all that I had.
Motion to adjourn?
That is the last item on the agenda. The motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I didn't.
A motion and a second. Yes and yes. The motion to adjourn is always in order under Robert's Rules of Orders.
There you go.
So at 9:57 p.m.,